Dragon Ball Z, the Seventh Universe's Guardian. Act 1, The Weight of Silence. Chapter 1, The Weight of Silence. The sky over East City broke open at 3 in the morning. No thunder preceded it. No lightning traced the clouds into warning shapes. The air simply tore, a vertical seam splitting the darkness above the industrial district like a wound in fabric that had been pulled too tight for too long. Light poured through it, not the clean white light of stars or the amber glow of street lamps, but something older. Something that had no name in any human language, because no human had ever stood close enough to it, and survived with enough of their mind intact to coin one. Then it closed, and a young man dropped out of the sky. He did not fall the way bodies fall. He descended, feet first, with the unhurried certainty of someone who had done this before and found the experience neither impressive nor frightening. He was perhaps 19, lean in the way that comes not from restriction but from the burning of everything unnecessary, the way a blade is lean after the forging. His hair was sun-bright and wild. His clothes were road-worn. 3 parallel whisker marks were etched into each cheek, not tattooed, not scarred, but present the way certain things are simply present on people who have been changed at a level deeper than skin. He landed on the roof of a water tower. The metal did not buckle under him, though it should have. The tower sat atop a 6-story processing plant on the eastern edge of the city, and for a long moment the young man stood on its peak and did nothing except breathe and look out at the lights below with the expression of someone conducting a private and very serious inventory. His name was Uzumaki Naruto. He was not from this world. He had known that much before he landed. The dimensional compression during the transit had given him 43 seconds in the void between universes to take stock of what he was carrying into a new existence, and what he had arrived with was this: a body rebuilt 3 times by divine interference, a chakra reserve that the sage of 6 paths had once described as absurd even by his own considerable standards. The residual spiritual weight of every tailed beast he had ever made a covenant with, the particular emotional scar tissue that accumulates in a person who loses the people they love to wars they did not start, and approximately 0 applicable intelligence about where, exactly, he had ended up. He reached into his coat and removed a small sensing crystal, one of Konoha's intelligence tools, designed to map local energy signatures within a 50-kilometer radius. He held it up. It glowed for a moment, processing, and then its output matrix rearranged itself into something he had never seen before. Energy. Vast quantities of it. Distributed across the planet in concentrations that reminded him, structurally, of the way Jinchuriki felt to his sensor touch back home. Not chakra, exactly. It ran along different frequencies. But it was power, and it was dense, and it was alive in the way only power that has been shaped by conscious will ever becomes alive. He pocketed the crystal. Below him, the city slept. Ground vehicles moved in slow rivers along the major roads. Somewhere to the north, he could smell the ocean. The air tasted of fuel exhaust and something green underneath it, grass or trees pushing through the gaps between the concrete, insisting on their presence. "All right," Naruto said to no one. He sat down on the peak of the water tower, pulled his knees to his chest, and began the very serious work of figuring out what kind of world he had landed in. He spent 4 hours at it. By the time the eastern horizon had gone from black to bruised purple, he had established several things with reasonable confidence. The planet had a moon. The moon was real, not a summoning construct, not an illusion, and its gravitational pull felt correct for something of its mass. The star this world orbited was slightly larger than the one he had grown up under, which accounted for the marginal difference in gravity he had registered the moment his feet touched the roof. The population of this city alone was several million, and the ambient emotional texture of all those sleeping minds pressed against the edge of his expanded perception like a vast and complicated chord, fear and love and boredom and hunger and grief all layered together in the particular way that large concentrations of human beings produce when they are not actively at war. That last part was interesting. They were not at war. Not yet, said something in the back of his mind, the part that had learned to read the specific quality of a peace that was only peace because the next conflict had not yet arrived. He pushed that thought aside. He had a habit of catastrophizing, earned honestly over a lifetime in which catastrophe had proven reliable. He was trying to be less certain about bad outcomes. He dropped off the water tower at dawn, landing silently in an alley behind the processing plant, and began to walk. The city was waking up around him. Delivery workers, bakers, sanitation crews moving their vehicles through the quiet streets with the particular efficiency of people who do important work that other people prefer not to think about. Naruto walked among them without drawing attention, which was a skill he had developed late and valued enormously. He was wearing his coat, a long garment in dark orange and black that had been a gift from someone he tried not to think about too often, and under it his sensing seals were active, passively cataloging everything within a half-kilometer radius. What he found cataloging was the energy again. 3 distinct signatures, none of them chakra, all of them in the direction he was walking because the city was funneling him east toward what appeared to be a research facility of some kind. He adjusted his heading toward the facility without deciding to do so, and he thought about that for a moment, the way bodies sometimes move toward interesting things before the conscious mind finished its deliberation. The facility was behind a fence. The fence was electrified. The signs on the fence said Capsule Corporation in large friendly letters that did not match the security infrastructure at all. Naruto stood outside the fence for a moment, looking at the sign. One of the 3 energy signatures was inside. He went over the fence at a spot where the security cameras had a 12-second blind spot between their rotation cycles, and landed in a garden. It was a very good garden. Someone had put real thought into it, not just the planting but the architecture of it, the way the paths moved through the different sections and curves that invited you forward without feeling like they were directing you. Fruit trees near the south wall. What appeared to be a vegetable section in the middle, currently covered against the early season cold. A greenhouse visible through a lattice of climbing vines. At the center of the garden, in a metal chair that had been dragged out from somewhere and positioned in the one spot that caught the weak early morning sun at exactly the right angle, a woman was sitting with a cup of coffee and a technical document that she was reading with the focused intensity of someone who had trained herself to make the most of mornings before the rest of the world needed things from her. She was, at first glance, unremarkable in the way that very capable people sometimes are, their capability so thoroughly integrated into their bearing that it reads simply as presence. Her hair was dark and cut practically. Her coffee cup said Dr. Briefs on it in the manner of someone who had received it as a gift and used it anyway. She was wearing clothes that could transition from laboratory work to executive meetings without adjustment. The energy signature was coming from her. Not from her, exactly. From the work she was doing. From the document in her hands and the solutions in progress it represented, the way a mathematician's notepad sometimes crackles with the energy of a theorem that has not quite resolved itself yet. She was building something. He could feel the shape of it in the air around her, the potential energy of an idea approaching completion. Naruto sat down on a garden bench 10 meters away. The woman looked up. She looked at him the way a person looks at something that should not be possible, with a particular expression that he had learned to read as either the precursor to screaming or the precursor to asking very precise questions. She did not scream. "How did you get in here?" she said. It was not really a question. "Over the fence," he said. "The fence is electrified." "I know." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the fence. Then she looked back at him. "You should be in a hospital," she said, in the tone of someone updating her model of the situation rather than expressing concern. "I'm fine," he said. "You have very good fence placement. The blind spot is only 12 seconds. 14, she said. "I designed it." "What do you want?" "I just got here," he said. "To this city?" "To this planet, actually. I'm trying to figure out what kind of world this is." She set down her coffee. She set down her document. She looked at him with an expression that had cycled through several stages in the last 10 seconds and arrived at something that was, if he was reading it correctly, cautious curiosity rather than alarm. "What kind of world?" she repeated. "What the power levels are. Who the major players are. Whether there's an active conflict I should know about." He paused. "I also don't know what this country is called." "West City," she said. "In the east area of Earth." "You said planet?" "I came from somewhere else." "Somewhere else," she said, in exactly the tone he would have used. "Different dimension. There was a transit event. I came out here." He reached into his coat and removed the sensing crystal. I can show you the energy readings if that helps. I'm not trying to be cryptic. I just don't have a map. She stood up. She walked over to him and looked at the sensing crystal in his palm with the direct, unguarded attention of someone who is interested in the world and has stopped being embarrassed about showing it. She reached out and touched it lightly with one finger, and he watched the energy in her sharpen and focus, the way it always did when someone genuinely intelligent encountered something outside their current model. That reading, she said, pointing at the matrix display. That's the planet's energy field. You mapped it. In about 4 hours. It's very dense. Much denser than what I'm used to. You're used to planets. I'm used to my home planet. This is my first time off it. He looked at her. What's your name? She seemed to consider whether to answer. She answered. Bulma Briefs. Naruto Uzumaki. He put the crystal away. Is there somewhere I can get food? I've been traveling for a while. Bulma looked at him for another long moment. Then she picked up her coffee, finished it, and said, Come inside. My mother will be cooking. And you're going to tell me everything about where you came from, because I am absolutely not letting something like that sensing crystal leave my line of sight until I understand how it works. He followed her inside. That was how it started. Chapter 2, The Briefs Household and the Shape of Things to Come. The Briefs' kitchen was a large room that had been designed for efficiency and colonized by warmth. The counters were organized in a way that spoke of someone who cooked seriously and often. The appliances were all slightly more advanced than anything Naruto had seen in technology catalogs, which he had been reviewing mentally since the moment he walked through the gate and registered that this world had a relationship with science that his own did not. The walls had been painted a color that was not quite yellow and not quite cream, a color that had no formal name but communicated unmistakably that food happened here and that food was important. Mrs. Briefs was at the center of it, and she was everything her kitchen was not, which was to say she was decorative rather than functional in her presentation, her hair and clothing arranged with the thoroughness of someone who had never abandoned the aesthetic standards of their youth regardless of age or hour of morning. She turned when they entered and beamed at Naruto with the particular expression of a woman who viewed the arrival of a young man in her kitchen as inherently positive. Oh, Bulma, you brought a friend. He came over the fence, Bulma said, with the detached accuracy of someone filing a report. Such energy, Mrs. Briefs said, which Naruto clocked as both conversational and somehow, literally accurate. Sit down, sit down. Are you hungry? Of course you are. Sit. He sat. He ate an enormous quantity of food, which Mrs. Briefs received as a compliment of the highest order and responded to by producing more food, and while he ate, Bulma sat across from him with a tablet and asked questions. She was very good at questions. They were precise without being interrogative, and they built on each other in a way that told him she was constructing a model as she went, revising it with each answer, not attached to any preliminary conclusion. He told her, in careful summary, about the elemental nations. About chakra, the energy system it ran on and the applications it enabled. About the wars. About the Sage of Six Paths and the cosmology attached to him. About dimensional theory as Naruto understood it, which was imperfect but practically informed by having been on the receiving end of several people who had bent spacetime in his presence. He did not tell her about the QB. Not yet. Not because he was hiding it but because it was a long story and he had learned that there was an order to things, that certain pieces of information needed foundations to land on or they simply bounced off. Bulma, for her part, told him about Dragon Balls. She told him the way someone tells a thing they have been telling for years and have acquired a certain efficiency with, hitting the structural notes, without self-consciousness. 7 spheres. Concentrated wish-granting energy. She had found the first one when she was 16 with a device she had built herself. She had gone looking for them with a monk and a shape-shifting pig and a desert bandit who turned out to be more complicated than she first estimated. She had grown up since then. She had a company to run, a family legacy to maintain, and considerably more appreciation for the scope of what was possible in the world than she had started with. Power levels, she said. You mentioned power levels. What's yours? I don't know what the scale is here, he said. We measure it in units. A trained fighter is around 100 to 500. Special forces, elite level, around 1,000. Beyond that starts getting into territory that destabilizes the measurement equipment. She paused. My husband is close to 200,000. Naruto considered this. He'd be in the middle range at home. Bulma's stylus stopped moving on her tablet. Middle range, she said. There were people during the war who measured in the hundreds of millions of chakra units. The sage himself he paused. He was beyond calibration. She was quiet for a moment. And you? She said. The last time I was measured directly, Naruto said, the measuring equipment broke, and the person doing the measuring sat down on the ground and didn't speak for about 20 minutes. Bulma looked at him. He looked back. You should meet my husband, she said. Is he dangerous? He's the prince of a planet full of warriors and he has a temper that occasionally breaks the surrounding geography, she said, with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who has made her peace with this. So yes. But he'll want to know about you, and he'll find out one way or another, and it's better if it's on my terms. Naruto thought about that. Fair, he said. Dr. Briefs came in from the laboratory wing at 9 in the morning with grease on his hands and a cat on his shoulder, and absorbed the information about the trans-dimensional visitor with the equanimity of a man who had spent decades married to someone who regularly brought impossible things home from adventures and treated them as ordinary. Sensing crystal, he said, examining the device Naruto offered. The matrix display. How are you rendering interdimensional energy signatures in a portable format? The processing requirements alone should be enormous. Seals, Naruto said. Show me a seal. Naruto took a napkin from the table and drew a basic sensing matrix on it in 3 seconds. Dr. Briefs looked at it for a long time, then took it to a piece of clean paper and began copying it with the focused attention of a man who had just discovered something new. The morning moved on. Bulma showed him to a guest room on the 2nd floor, which was larger than any room he had ever personally occupied and smelled of cedar. From the window he could see the entire compound, the various research buildings and the launch pad and the testing range on the eastern side, and beyond the compound fenced the city stretching out in every direction, and beyond the city the ocean shimmering at the edge of the horizon. He stood at the window for a while. The sensing crystal in his pocket was pulsing lightly, which it only did when something significant was approaching. Not a threat signature, just mass, the kind of mass that a very large or very energetically dense object produced when it moved quickly through an atmosphere. He went to the window and looked up. 2 objects were descending through the stratosphere, leaving heat trails behind them like comets. They were coming in fast, much faster than normal atmospheric entry should allow, which meant they were controlled rather than falling, and the energy signatures attached to them were enormous by any standard he had encountered since arriving on this planet. His hand went to the window latch. Below, in the compound garden, Dr. Briefs was still copying the seal matrix. Mrs. Briefs was hanging laundry. Either of them had looked up. He opened the window. The 2 objects resolved as they descended, losing altitude in a controlled burn that was technically impressive and practically alarming, and he registered their signatures now with full clarity. Saiyan. He did not know that word yet, but the energy had a particular signature, aggressive and dense, the way a fire that has been banked for too long feels when it finally gets air. And underneath the signatures, underneath the power, the emotional content that he could never quite turn off, pride and cold professional assessment, and something very much like contempt directed at the small blue planet below. They landed at the edge of the compound. Naruto had already descended from the 2nd floor window and was standing in the garden between the landing site and the research building where Bulma had gone to work. He was not visibly doing anything. His hands were in his coat pockets. He was looking at the landing site with an expression of complete tranquility that was not the tranquility of someone who was not paying attention. The 2 figures who stepped out of the small pods were wearing matching body armor in black and red. One was enormously tall, with a face that had been arranged by its owner into a permanent expression of absolute indifference to the emotional comfort of others. The other was shorter and had the specific stillness of someone so confident in their capacity for violence that they no longer felt the need to demonstrate it. The shorter one's gaze moved across the compound, conducting an inventory of the same kind that Naruto had conducted on the city at dawn. His gaze reached Naruto and stopped. He looked at Naruto for 3 full seconds. Naruto looked back. Interesting, said Raditz, in a language that Naruto's translation seal rendered a half-second later. He was not talking to Nappa. He was talking to himself, which was more informative. Naruto's sensing crystal pulsed once, sharp. He reached up and adjusted his collar, a small gesture, and in the act of it deployed 3 sensing seals that settled invisibly into the garden, the gate, and the perimeter wall. He would know if these visitors moved in any direction without an announcement. Bulma had come out of the research building behind him. He heard her footsteps, then heard them stop. Who are those? She said quietly, from several meters back. They came from space, Naruto said, with equal quiet. They're looking for something. How do you know? The one in front just registered about 4 people in this compound, did the math on whether any of them posed a threat, and decided no. That expression is what people look like when they've decided they have time to be curious instead of careful. A beat of silence. That's a worrying amount of information to get from a facial expression, Bulma said. I've had practice, Naruto said. Go back inside. Find out how to reach your husband. He's in the mountains. 3 hours by air. Try to make it 1, Naruto said. He walked toward the gate. Chapter 3. Raditz and the First Measurement. The gate of the Capsule Corporation compound was wrought iron over a concrete foundation, which was aesthetically appropriate for a major research facility and structurally irrelevant to the individuals currently standing outside it. Naruto reached the gate and stopped. Raditz had not moved. He was standing where he had landed, 50 meters from the gate, with the patience of someone who had calculated that there was no need to hurry. Nappa stood slightly behind and to his left, cataloging the surrounding structures with the practical attention of a demolitions professional assessing load-bearing elements. Naruto opened the gate and stepped outside. The sensing seals he had placed on the compound perimeter had given him complete positional awareness of both scions for the last 2 minutes, so there were no surprises in their precise locations. What the seals had also told him was that both men were actively suppressing their energy outputs, the way that certain fighters did when they wanted to appear weaker than they were. He had met Kaguya. He had fought Madara Uchiha at the peak of his power. The specific quality of someone restraining their own energy signature was a thing he could identify from a considerable distance. He was also, pointedly, not restraining his own. He stood in the open gate and let his chakra sit where it naturally sat, which was everywhere in a rough sphere with a radius of approximately 40 meters, warm and utterly without aggression, the way sunlight was everywhere without being directed at anything in particular. He watched Raditz feel it. It was a small thing, a slight adjustment in the taller scion's posture, the kind of involuntary correction that the body makes when its preliminary assessment has been revised. Raditz did not show surprise. He was too disciplined for that. But something in his gaze shifted, the specific recalibration of a professional fighter updating his threat model. This is private property, Naruto said. He said it in the local language, not the Scion language his translation seal had picked up from their arrival communication. I don't recognize your planetary property conventions, Raditz said. His translator, some device built into his scouter, rendered the language in real time. That's fine, Naruto said. I'm not citing you on a technicality. I'm telling you where the boundary is. The people inside that fence are under my protection. The conversation we have from here forward should probably take that into account. Raditz looked at him with the particular attention of a man encountering something that does not fit cleanly into his categories. You're not from this planet, he said. It was not a question. No. Your power reading is unusual. The scouter on Raditz's face had been running calculations since Naruto stepped outside. He could feel it, a low frequency scan playing across the surface of his chakra field. It was not invasive enough to warrant a response, just observation, and he waited for the results with mild curiosity about what number the technology would produce and whether it would be accurate. The scouter produced a number. Whatever that number was, it required Raditz to remain very still for approximately 4 seconds, which in the body language of someone trained to violence was equivalent to a sharp intake of breath in a less disciplined person. That reading, Nappa said from behind. Irrelevant, Raditz said to Nappa, sharply. Naruto watched this exchange. It's probably malfunctioning, Naruto said pleasantly. You'd want to recalibrate it. What are you, Raditz said. A traveler, Naruto said. I arrived yesterday. I'm still learning the geography. He paused. What are you looking for? A silence. There's a scion on this planet, Raditz said finally. Sent here as an infant. We've come to retrieve him, or activate him for his original mission. Which was? The extermination of this planet's dominant population. Naruto looked at him for a long moment. He thought about several things in quick succession. He thought about the village at the edge of the wind country where the Sand Nin had poisoned the water supply because it would be strategically convenient to have the village gone. He thought about the Valley of the End and what Sasuke had looked like when they were both 17 and choosing different answers to the same question. He thought about the Third World War, and the First, and the way wars always had someone somewhere making a calculation in which living people were variables rather than persons. He thought about this, and he kept his face entirely calm. No, he said. Raditz blinked. No, that's not going to happen, Naruto said. The planet. The people on it. That's not something I'm going to allow. I want to be clear about that up front because it'll save us both time. If your plan involves this planet being emptied of its population, that plan is done. You can make a different plan. Raditz looked at him with an expression that was moving through several stages. Disbelief. Reassessment. A kind of cold professional calculation that Naruto recognized as the specific look of someone measuring the distance between what they want to do and what they can actually do. You're one person, Raditz said. Yes, Naruto agreed. The low-end projection for our brother's current power level is over 8,000 units. Nappa here measures at 4,000. I'm significantly higher. He stopped. The scouter was still displaying its number. He clearly did not entirely trust it. Listen, Naruto said, in a different tone, quieter and with more weight in it. I'm not your enemy. I don't have a stake in the political situation between the Saiyan people and whoever they work for or work against. I don't know your history and I'm not judging it. I'm telling you something specific and factual. This planet, these people, are under my protection. That is not a negotiable position. I'm not presenting it as one. I'm presenting it as information you need to have before you make decisions. He looked at both of them in turn. I'd rather talk than fight, he said. I have no quarrel with either of you. But I need you to understand that whether we fight or talk is entirely within your power to determine, and the outcome either way is the same as far as the planet is concerned. Silence stretched between them, long and loaded, the kind of silence that only exists when two very different forces have recognized each other's weight, and have not yet decided what to do about it. Nappa made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Prince Vegeta should hear about this, Nappa said. Yes, Raditz said slowly. He should. He looked at Naruto with an expression that had settled into something that was, if not respect, at least the specific attentiveness that precedes respect. We'll return. When we do, there will be more of us. I'll be here, Naruto said. They went back to their pods. He stood in the open gate and watched them break atmosphere, 2 heat trails rising into the morning sky until they were gone, and then he turned and walked back into the compound. Bulma was standing just inside the gate, tablet in hand, having clearly been there long enough to catch most of the conversation. They'll come back, she said. Yes, he said. With more people. Probably with a prince, he said. Which is better than the alternative. What's the alternative? They come back and skip the conversation. He looked at her. Did you reach your husband? She was quiet for a moment. Her expression had shifted, a dozen small calculations running just below the surface. He had seen that expression before, on different faces, and he understood what it meant. She was not afraid, exactly. She was a person who had been facing impossible things for years and had developed a relationship with impossibility that was somewhere between adversarial and accepting, and something in the last 10 minutes had recalibrated her sense of where Naruto Uzumaki fit in the landscape she navigated. His brother, she said. What? The scion on this planet. His brother. Raditz is his brother. She looked at the empty sky. Kakarot. Who's Kakarot? Naruto said. He's a man named Son Goku, Bulma said. And he has a son. And his son is the reason I got up early this morning. She looked at the tablet, and her expression did something complicated. We need to make some calls. Naruto followed her inside. The compound was quiet again. Mrs. Briefs had retreated to the kitchen at some point and was running the tap, the mundane sound of it filling the hallways in a way that was oddly steadying. Dr. Briefs's laboratory was producing its usual low hum. The cat was sitting on the gatepost, watching the sky with the detached interest of a creature that has observed too many extraordinary things to be impressed by them. Naruto sat down in the garden and put his hands on his knees and breathed. The crystal in his pocket pulsed twice, slow and even, the way it did when it had finished a full environmental scan and found nothing actively threatening. He thought about the word protection. He had used it twice in that conversation, and he had meant it both times, and he was aware that the word carried a certain gravity for him that it might not carry for other people, because the people he had failed to protect were not abstract. They had names and faces and the specific quality of presences that continue to exist in the memory even after the body is gone. He was not going to fail to protect this world. He did not entirely know yet what the shape of that commitment would look like, what it would require of him in the weeks and months ahead, who would need him, and in what way and at what cost. He had arrived less than a day ago. He had already made an enemy of something that was coming back with reinforcements. This was, he thought, extremely consistent with the general pattern of his life. He looked up at the sky, clear and blue now, the morning clouds burned off by a sun that was slightly larger than the one he had grown up watching rise over the Hokage monument. "All right," he said to the sky. He went inside to help with whatever came next. Chapter 4, Son Goku, Chi-Chi, and the Architecture of a Promise. Son Goku arrived on a Nimbus cloud at 2 in the afternoon, and landed in the Capsule Corporation parking lot with the cheerful disregard for protocol that Naruto recognized, somewhat uncomfortably, as a structural feature of a certain kind of person who had been very powerful for a very long time and had never needed to develop a careful approach to anything. He was not what Naruto had expected. He was large, for one thing, in the quiet way that some fighters were large, not ostentatiously but fundamentally, as though the frame had been built to specifications slightly beyond what regular human architecture called for. His expression was open and direct and devoid of calculation, which after the morning's conversations with Raditz felt so disorienting that Naruto spent the first 30 seconds of observation recalibrating his baseline. Goku's energy was extraordinary, not by the standards Naruto carried in his own body, but by the standards of everything else Naruto had registered on this planet since landing. It was enormous, warm and clean and absolutely unambiguous, like a fire that has nothing to prove. He radiated it without intent, just as Naruto radiated his own chakra without intent, and when Naruto stepped forward to introduce himself, he saw Goku's expression shift slightly in the way that fighters' expressions shifted when they registered another fighter's presence. Then Goku smiled. It was a smile of pure, uncomplicated delight. "Hey," he said. "You're the guy Bulma called about. She said you showed up over the fence this morning and scared off Raditz." "I had a conversation with Raditz," Naruto said. "Bulma said it was one of the most terrifying things she'd ever watched, and she's blown up the moon," Goku said cheerfully. "Wow. Your energy is really something. You're not from Earth." "Dimensional transit," Naruto said. "I arrived yesterday." Goku looked at him with the specific expression of someone deciding, in real time, that they have found something interesting. "Can I feel your energy for a second? I just want to get a sense of it." "Sure," Naruto said. Goku extended a hand, not touching, just proximity, the way certain martial artists did when they wanted to feel the shape of another fighter's ki without engagement. Naruto let his chakra sit naturally, undisguised, the way he had with the scouter, and watched Goku's face move through a series of expressions that were more transparent than anything Naruto had seen from another fighter since Jiraiya, who had also been constitutionally incapable of pretending not to feel what he felt. "That's," Goku said and stopped. "Yeah," Naruto agreed. "That's a lot," Goku said. "Dimensional travel doesn't compress well," Naruto said, which was not entirely accurate but was not entirely inaccurate either, and moved the conversation forward without requiring him to explain the entire history of the 9 Tails and the Sage of 6 Paths at 2 in the afternoon in a parking lot. Goku pulled his hand back and looked at Naruto with an expression that had settled into uncomplicated respect, the kind that very strong fighters develop quickly for other very strong fighters when both parties know that the numbers are what they are. You told Raditz to leave, he said. I told him the planet was under my protection and offered him the option of a conversation instead of a conflict, Naruto said. Did he take it? He's going to consult with someone called Prince Vegeta, and then come back with more people. Goku nodded slowly. That's Vegeta, he said, with the tone of someone confirming a weather pattern. Okay. We have some time. That's good. He turned and walked toward the Capsule Corp building. I need to talk to Bulma. And I should probably call Chi-Chi. She's going to want to know what's happening. Naruto fell into step beside him. Chi-Chi is? My wife. She's at home with Gohan. Our son. Something shifted in Goku's voice when he said it, a weight that had not been there before, not grief exactly but the specific kind of seriousness that comes into a person's voice when they say the name of someone they would do anything for. She's going to be upset. About Raditz? About all of it. A pause. She's always worried about Gohan. She wants him to study, be a scholar. She never wanted him to fight. Another pause longer. I've never figured out how to promise her that he won't have to. They walked in silence for a moment. How old is your son? Naruto said. 4, Goku said. Naruto thought about being 4. He thought about what his own life had looked like at 4, the specific quality of that loneliness, the village that looked through him rather than at him, the small apartment, and the canned soup, and the painted-over mirrors. He kept that thought to himself. What's he like? He said instead. Goku's expression changed entirely. It went from serious to luminous, the way faces go when they have a subject they genuinely love and have been given permission to talk about it. He's incredible. He's already stronger than most adults, and he doesn't even know it. He learned to read before I did. He cried for an hour when we found a bird with a broken wing, and he spent 2 days trying to fix a splint for it. Goku paused. He's going to be incredible. He's already incredible, Naruto said. You just said he is. Goku looked at him sideways, that transparent expression again. Yeah, he said. He is. They reached the building. Chi-Chi arrived at 4 in the afternoon in a car that she drove with decisive speed, and she came through the Capsule Corporation entrance with the specific energy of a woman who has been worried for hours and has channeled the worry into forward momentum. She was, Naruto registered immediately, someone who operated from a position of deep conviction about the things she cared about, her family, their safety, Gohan's future, and she brought that conviction into every room she entered the way some people brought perfume. You simply knew she was there. A small boy had fallen asleep in the back seat of the car. Gohan. Naruto looked at him through the window for a moment and then looked away, because something in the sight of the sleeping child hit a register he had not anticipated, the particular vulnerability of someone very small who was going to have to become something very large, who did not know it yet, and whose mother knew it, and was afraid. Chi-Chi came over to where he was standing and looked at him with the direct, evaluating gaze of someone who had been told about him and was in the process of deciding what to do with the information. You're the one who was at the gate this morning, she said. Yes, he said. Bulma says you told the alien to leave and he left. That's roughly accurate. She looked at him for a long moment. He got the sense, from her, of someone who had spent years managing an enormous amount of fear by converting it into action and competence and insistence, a form of bravery that was less celebrated than the kind that went out and hit things, but no less real and, in its way, more costly. My son, she said, and stopped. He's 4, Naruto said. He should study. He should read books and fix birds with broken wings and grow up as slowly as the world will allow. Her expression changed. I can't promise you that nothing is coming, he said. I talked to those men this morning and I know something is coming. But I can tell you that it's not going to arrive at your door uncontested, and that whatever I can do to give Gohan time, I'll do. You don't know us, she said. No, he said. But I know what it means to be 4 years old, and have the whole world looking at you and seeing something to be used. He looked at her steadily. I'm not going to let that happen to your son if I can stop it. A silence. Behind them, Goku was talking to Bulma. The two of them bent over a display that showed orbital tracking data, their voices serious and low. Mrs. Briefs had produced a tray of food from somewhere, and was attempting to press it on everyone. Dr. Briefs was in the background, still, Naruto suspected, thinking about seals. Chi-Chi looked at Naruto for a long moment. Then she looked at the car, at the sleeping shape of her son in the back seat. He gets scared during thunderstorms, she said. He hides under the blanket even though he can punch through a wall. That sounds about right, Naruto said. He's not a fighter, she said. He is. But he's not. Does that make sense? Yes, Naruto said. That makes complete sense. She was quiet for a moment more. Then she took one of the cups from Mrs. Briefs's tray and held it with both hands and looked at the sky. What are you going to do? She said. When they come back. Talk first, Naruto said. As long as talking is possible. And when it isn't? He was quiet for a moment. Then I'll do whatever I have to, he said, to make sure we're still having this conversation after. She nodded once, the way certain people nodded when they had received information they intended to hold on to. In the car, Gohan shifted in his sleep and murmured something that might have been a word. The afternoon light came down over the Capsule Corporation compound, long and golden, and somewhere far overhead and moving fast, 2 pods were pushing through the upper atmosphere on their way to a rendezvous that was still several days away. For now, there was food, and there was the particular warmth of people who have decided, without ceremony, to face something together. It was enough. Chapter 5, The Weight of the Scouter's Number. Piccolo found him at dawn 2 days later. Naruto had been doing his morning training on the roof of the Capsule Corporation guest wing, which was 5 stories up and, at this hour, the highest point for half a kilometer in any direction. He was not doing anything that would look, to a casual observer, like training. He was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed and his hands in his lap, perfectly still, the way he had learned to be still from the frogs of Mount Maiboku, and the energy he was moving was invisible to anyone who could not feel the specific frequency it ran on. He heard Piccolo approach from about 300 meters out, the specific sound signature of a very large person moving through air at speed, and he identified the energy signature from even further than that, roughly a kilometer before arrival, a distinctive cold green pressure that felt like water in deep shade. He opened his eyes when Piccolo landed on the roof's edge. Piccolo looked at him. He was, Naruto registered, a person of considerable presence. Tall and lean and arranged by experience into something that was neither fully human nor fully alien, a face that had been set by years of solitude into an expression that communicated clearly that he had chosen that solitude deliberately, and defended it with commitment. The energy around him was not hostile, but it was absolutely boundary marking, a perimeter drawn in ki that said very plainly, I am here. I am measuring you. I have not decided what you are yet. You're the one who spoke to the Saiyans, Piccolo said, without preamble. Word travels, Naruto said. Not hard. There are only so many people on this planet who can touch that power level. Piccolo stepped off the roof edge and sat on it in a way that communicated nothing except absolute comfort with height. I want to know what your intentions are. I told the Saiyans the planet was under my protection, Naruto said. That's as close to an official statement of intentions as I've made. Why? You don't know this planet. You arrived 3 days ago. 2.5, Naruto said. And the reason is the same reason it always is. Which is? He thought about how to say it. He had answered this question before, in different contexts, with different interlocutors, and he had learned that the true answer was simple but required a certain kind of reception to not sound like either naivety or arrogance. He looked at the horizon, where the city was beginning to wake up in layers, the earliest risers first, the smell of coffee already rising from the neighborhood below. Because I can, he said. And because the people who can, should. Piccolo was quiet for a moment. That's an uncomplicated answer, he said. It's a complicated answer that I've learned to say simply, Naruto said. The complicated version involves a lot of dead people and a war that I couldn't stop and what I decided afterwards about what I owed to wherever I ended up next. He looked at Piccolo. Your version is different. But I don't think it's that different. A long silence. The city below was producing its morning sounds, vehicle engines and bird calls, and somewhere, distantly, music from a radio. The Saiyan boy, Piccolo said. Son Goku's son, Gohan, Naruto said. He has potential that's beyond anything this planet has seen before. Untrained potential. Raw. A pause. If the Saiyans come and Goku is killed and the boy is not prepared, I know, Naruto said. Do you? I know what untrained potential looks like when someone gets hurt in front of it, and it activates without a framework, Naruto said. I've seen what that costs a child. He kept his voice even. But Gohan is 4 and Chi-Chi has made her position clear and I have maybe 10 days before the Saiyans arrive. I'm not going to spend those 10 days trying to override a mother's judgment about her son's childhood. Piccolo looked at him with an expression that was reassessing something. You could train him and she wouldn't have to know, Piccolo said carefully. Yes, Naruto said. I could. I won't. Why not? Because she'd know eventually, and it would be a betrayal, and she has enough things threatening her family without someone she's just started to trust adding himself to that list. He paused. I'll talk to her. I'll make the case. If she says no, I'll find another way to keep Gohan safe that doesn't require breaking his mother's trust. Another silence, longer this time. Piccolo had a face that was difficult to read, not because he was concealing anything but because he had spent so long living outside the normal human emotional range that his face had lost practice with the ordinary expressions. But something in it shifted now, small and specific. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone who arrived with that power level and said what you said to Raditz to be considerably more interested in dominating the situation. I've been the most powerful person in several rooms, Naruto said. It's not as interesting as people think. Piccolo made a sound that was not quite a laugh. They sat in the morning light for a while, two people who had arrived at roughly the same place by very different routes and found, in that convergence, something that was not friendship exactly but was at least the preliminary architecture of it. I'll train with you, Piccolo said eventually. If you want a benchmark for what this planet's fighter class can do at its peak. I'd like that, Naruto said. I'll come back tonight. The desert east of the city. There's a formation of red rock that the sensors miss. I'll find it, Naruto said. The crystal would show him. Piccolo stood, stepped off the roof edge, and dropped from view without ceremony. Naruto sat for another few minutes in the morning quiet, and then he went down to breakfast. Chi-Chi was there. She had arrived early, before even Mrs. Briefs was in the kitchen, and she had found the kitchen and started cooking in it with the determined focus of someone who needed to do something with their hands while they thought. She had made, Naruto estimated from the smell, an extraordinary amount of food, the kind of quantity that comes from worry channeled into industry. He sat down and she put a plate in front of him without asking and poured 2 cups of tea and sat down across from him, and wrapped both hands around her cup. I want to talk about Gohan, she said. Okay, he said. I know what everyone thinks, she said. I know they all think I'm being naive. That I'm pretending a fight isn't coming because I don't want it to come. I know Goku thinks it, even though he doesn't say it. I know Krillin and Yamcha and all of them think it. She looked at her cup. I'm not naive. I know, he said. I know what Gohan is. I knew it before any of them. I knew the first time he grabbed the bars of his crib and bent them without noticing. I knew when he was 2 and he screamed at a wasp and the wasp flew through a wall. She paused. He's going to be extraordinary. I know that. I've always known that. She lifted her head and looked at Naruto directly. But he gets to have a childhood, she said. He gets to have that. I am not going to take that from him because the world wants him to be useful before he's ready. Naruto held her gaze. You're right, he said. She blinked. I talked to Piccolo this morning, he said. He made the same case you probably knew he was going to make, that Gohan needs training, that his potential needs a framework. And he's not wrong about the potential. But the timing of that conversation is yours to control. Not his. Not mine. Not Goku's. He paused. If you decide you want Gohan to have more training than he's getting, I'll help with that. If you decide you want him to have 10 more years of cram school and mud pies and thunderstorm blanket forts, I'll make sure he gets that. That's not my call. It's yours. Chi-Chi looked at him. Her expression was the expression of someone who has been braced for an argument, and found instead that the wall they were prepared to push against had simply opened. You said that yesterday too, she said. About his choices being mine. I meant it then. I mean it now. You're very strange, she said, not unkindly. I know, he said. Where did you come from? Really? So he told her. Not everything, But the shape of it, the village that had looked through him and the war that had asked everything of him and the dimension transit that had landed him here, in this kitchen, at this table, with this tea. He kept it measured, not performing distance but genuinely selective, giving her the pieces that would help her understand who he was without drowning her in the biography of a world she would never see. She listened the way certain people listen, completely, without interrupting, with the occasional small nod that meant she was integrating rather than just receiving. When he finished, she was quiet for a while. You didn't have a mother, she said. No, he said. And they still made you fight. They didn't make me. But yes. She looked at her cup. She looked at the kitchen, her kitchen, the tools of care and continuity arranged on the counter. I'm going to fight to keep Gohan's childhood intact for as long as I possibly can, she said. And then when I can't anymore, I'm going to make sure he has every possible resource for what comes next. She looked at him. I want you to be part of that second thing. When the time comes. Yes, he said. But in the meantime, she said, I want to know how you deflected two enormous aliens with a conversation. He smiled. It was the first time he had fully smiled since arriving on this planet. That, he said, is a long story. But there's enough food. She refilled both cups of tea. Outside the kitchen window, the city was fully awake now, going about its ordinary business under the ordinary sky, and for a moment, just a moment, the weight of what was coming lifted, and there was only the kitchen and the tea and two people who had each lost things they could not get back and had decided, without fanfare, to protect what remained. It was a small decision. It would turn out to be the most important one either of them made that year. Chapter 6, The Arrival, Vegeta, and the Shape of a Warning. The Science arrived on the 11th day. Naruto had known it would be 11 days from the moment he read the orbital trajectory that Bulma's equipment had mapped after Raditz departed. He had told Bulma, and Bulma had told Goku, and in the intervening 11 days a great deal had happened and not happened. The Z Fighters, which was what Bulma called them collectively in the way that groups of people who have been through difficult things together acquire collective names, had gathered at the Capsule Corporation compound and trained and argued and eaten enormous quantities of Mrs. Briefs's cooking and generally conducted themselves in the way of people who know something is coming and have done everything they can and must now simply wait. Naruto had spent the 11 days doing several things. He had trained with Piccolo in the Red Rock Desert every night from midnight to 4 in the morning, and these sessions had been, on both sides, informative. Piccolo fought with a precision and a commitment to efficiency that Naruto respected enormously. No wasted movement, no performance, just the clean architecture of someone who had spent years learning exactly what his body could do and how to do all of it at once. In return, Naruto showed him a fraction of what chakra looked like applied to the art of fighting, not the dramatic applications, not Raisengans, just the foundational work, the way enhanced perception and physical amplification wove together, and watched Piccolo's expression go through that same particular calibration he had seen on Raditz's face. He had talked to Goku 5 times over those 11 days, conversations that had a specific quality, the quality of two people who approached power from fundamentally different directions finding the convergence points. Goku fought for the fight. Not for the violence, that was not it, he had no love for the violence, but for the test, the encounter with something that pushed back, the particular aliveness of being at the edge of what you could do. Naruto fought because people he cared about would be hurt if he didn't. These were not incompatible positions. They shared a foundation. He had spent time with Gohan. This had happened quietly, and without announcement. Chi-Chi had not told anyone she was bringing Gohan to the compound on the 5th day, and Naruto had not asked why she brought him. The boy had walked through the compound gate in a small hat that was too big for his head, holding his mother's hand, and he had looked up at Naruto with the specific expression of a child who has been told something important about a person and is deciding whether the information matches the reality. Gohan had enormous eyes. They were his father's eyes in shape, but something different in quality, a deeper attention, the kind that some children have who have been talked to as intelligent beings from the beginning. He had looked at Naruto for a long moment, and then he had said, in a very serious voice, "Mom says you're protecting everyone." "I'm trying to," Naruto said. "Even me?" "Especially you," Naruto said. Gohan had considered this. "I have a book about the solar system," he said. "Do you want to see it?" Yes, Naruto said. They had spent 2 hours on the garden bench looking at the book about the solar system, and Gohan had asked very precise questions about every planet and listened to the answers with the complete attention of a child who has learned that information is worth having and has not yet been taught to pretend otherwise. Naruto had told him about the night sky visible from Mount Myaboku and the constellations that did not match any constellation in the book but which a very old toad had once tried to explain to him. Gohan had laughed at the toad astronomer. It was a good laugh, full and real, the laugh of a child who is still learning what his own laugh sounds like. Chi-Chi had watched this from 10 meters away and said nothing. On the 8th day, Naruto had gone to the mountains alone. The mountains east of West City ran in a long chain that was not quite natural, the geology slightly too regular, the formations shaped by forces that were not entirely tectonic. He had found a plateau at 4,000 meters that had a clear view of the sky in every direction and spent 12 hours there in full chakra release, sitting in the center of a complete sensing array and letting his perception expand until it touched every edge of the country's airspace. What he was doing, at its most fundamental, was learning the planet. He needed to know it the way he knew Konoha, not just the geography but the energy, the way places felt from inside his perception, the specific textures of different landscapes and populations and the space between them. He needed this because when the Saiyans came back, he could not afford to fight blind. He needed to know where every person he was responsible for was, at every moment, without having to look. On the 11th morning, the crystal pulsed sharp and continuous. He was in the compound kitchen with Goku and Krillin and Yamcha and Bulma when it started, the pulse so regular it was almost rhythmic, and he put his hand flat on the table and everyone looked at him. They're here, he said. How far? Goku said. Upper atmosphere. Decelerating. They'll be on the ground, and he closed his eyes, felt the rate of descent. 40 minutes? Maybe less. Bulma was already at her equipment. I have them on satellite. 3 signatures. 2 very large power readings and 1, she stopped. 1 that's off the scale. I can't get a ceiling on it. That's Vegeta, Naruto said. You've never met him, Krillin said. No. But the one who stayed behind to consult with someone rather than escalating on his own was Raditz. Raditz is disciplined. The person a disciplined fighter goes home to check with before making a move is the person whose ceiling he can't be certain about. He opened his eyes. That's Vegeta. A silence. We need to move, Goku said. We need to move to the right place, Naruto said. Somewhere with space and nothing that breaks. East of the city. The desert Piccolo uses. He looked around the room at the people in it, Goku with his straightforward readiness, Krillin whose courage was the more impressive kind because it required constant effort against visible fear, Yamcha who had the specific look of someone who has been through things and chosen to keep showing up anyway. Bulma behind her equipment with the steady hands of someone who had decided her job was to give everyone else the best possible information, and do it without flinching. I want everyone clear on something before we go, he said. They looked at him. My objective today is to have a conversation, he said. Vegeta comes because he's heard something about the scouter reading and he wants to know if it's real. I'm going to let him find out that it's real. If that conversation goes well, there may not be a fight today. He paused. If it goes badly, I want you all to hold back. Let me handle the initial contact. You're backup, not frontline. Do you understand? Krillin and Yamcha exchanged a look. That's going to be a hard ask, Goku said, without any resentment in it, just honesty. I know, Naruto said. But a fight today doesn't end the problem. The Saiyan army is bigger than 3 people. If I can create a situation where Vegeta needs to recalculate instead of escalate, we buy time. We buy more time than winning a fight today would. Goku thought about this. He thought about it with the transparent earnestness that characterized everything he did, not rushing to an answer, actually considering the idea from its foundations. Okay, he said. Your lead. But if it goes the other way, I'm going to fight. If it goes the other way, Naruto said, I'll need you to. Yes. They drove into the desert as the orbital trajectory resolved itself into 3 points of light descending through the cloud layer. Nappa arrived first, with the ground-shaking assurance of a man who has been doing damage for so long that the possibility of not doing damage no longer registers as an option. Then Raditz, and Naruto saw in Raditz bearing the specific readjustment of someone who had reported a scouter number to a superior and been required to defend it, the lingering stiffness of someone whose professional credibility had been challenged. Then Vegeta. He was smaller than Naruto had expected. Compact and precise and radiating the specific energy of someone who has never had to be large because their presence has always done the work instead. His face was arranged in an expression that was not a mask, it was his actual face, the face of a person for whom the world is a classification system and everything in it is either above or below a threshold that only he knows the location of. He landed and looked at Naruto. He looked at him for a long time. The scouter on his face was running calculations. Naruto let his chakra sit exactly where it was, undiminished, unperformed. Just present. The way sunlight was present, Vegeta's expression did not change. He was too controlled for that. But something shifted behind his eyes, a displacement of certainty so small that only someone watching for it would have caught it, and Naruto caught it. The scouter, Vegeta said finally, gave an accurate reading. I imagine it did, Naruto said. Who are you? Naruto Uzumaki. I arrived on this planet 11 days ago from a different dimension. I've chosen to protect it. Chosen, Vegeta said, in a tone that held both contempt and genuine interest in equal measure. This planet has people worth protecting on it, Naruto said. And I can. So I will. Vegeta looked at him for another long moment. Then he looked at Goku. Something happened in that look. Something complicated and old and beyond the current conversation, a history between them that Naruto could feel the weight of without knowing the details. Goku met his eyes steadily. Kakarot, Vegeta said. A single word carrying years of things. Vegeta, Goku said. Silence. Vegeta looked back at Naruto. You told Raditz that this planet was under your protection, he said. That it was non-negotiable. Yes, Naruto said. I don't accept conditions presented to me by people whose authority I haven't validated, Vegeta said. I understand that, Naruto said. I'm not asking you to accept conditions. I'm offering you a different set of options than the ones you arrived with. The options you arrived with end in a way that isn't useful for either of us. The options I'm offering might be more interesting. Interesting, Vegeta said, with precisely the tone of a person who has been offered bait and is deciding whether the hook is worth the bait. You came because the scouter number was impossible and you needed to know if it was real, Naruto said. It's real. That's the first piece of information. The second piece is that I've been watching your options and mine since you landed, and I don't think a fight today is the best one for either of us. The third piece is that I have no stake in whatever political arrangement exists between the Saiyan people and whoever they currently answer to. I don't want your planet. I don't want your army. I want this planet to be left alone. A very long silence. Nappa was vibrating with the energy of a man who wanted to hit something and was being prevented from it by the application of someone else's decision-making. Raditz was watching Naruto with the expression of someone who had reported a number, and was now watching that number prove itself out in real time. Vegeta looked at the sky. He looked at the desert. He looked at Goku, who was standing with his hands at his sides and his ki absolutely level, neither threatening nor retreating. Then he looked at Naruto. I'll need time to consider, he said. Take whatever you need, Naruto said. You're not concerned I'll use that time to prepare an attack. You're already prepared, Naruto said. You don't need more time for that. You need more time to think. That's fine. Something happened in Vegeta's expression. It was very small and it was gone quickly, but it was there, the specific shift of a person being seen clearly by someone they expected to only see the surface. This conversation is not over, Vegeta said. No, Naruto agreed. It's just starting. Vegeta looked at him for one more long moment. Then he and Nappa and Raditz went back to their pods and broke atmosphere. The desert was quiet. Krillin let out a breath that he had apparently been holding for about 8 minutes. Did that just, he started. Yes, Bulma said, from beside the vehicles. Her voice was not quite steady. Yes, I think it did. Goku walked up to Naruto and looked at him. That was the most unsettling thing I've ever watched, Goku said. And I've watched people destroy planets. He needed to categorize me, Naruto said. He came here because he needed to know what category to put the scouter reading in. Giving him an answer that didn't fit any of his existing categories means he has to go create a new one. That takes time. Time we can use, Piccolo said, from somewhere to the left. He had arrived partway through without announcing himself. Time we can use, Naruto confirmed. He looked up at the sky. The stars were coming out, early and bright, and somewhere in the vast dark between them something with enormous power and a pride so dense it was almost a physical substance was thinking very hard about a conversation it had not been prepared for. Naruto looked at the stars and thought about the next step. There was always a next step. That had always been the thing. Not the destination, not the resolution, not the point where everything settled and stayed. Just the next step, and the one after that, and the willingness to keep finding them. He turned back to the group. We should eat, he said. Mrs. Briefs will be waiting. And despite everything, Krillin laughed. Act 2, The Weight of Borrowed Skies. Chapter 6, What the Earth Remembers. The gravity of 300 times Earth's standard did not break Naruto Uzumaki. It pressed against his skin like a second atmosphere, like the hand of something vast trying to remind him how small he was, and he met it with the patience of a man who had been crushed before and learned to breathe through it. The hyperbolic time chamber smelled of chalk and silence. The pale expanse stretched in every direction without horizon, a white void that had swallowed decades of warriors and given them back sharper. Naruto had been inside it for 11 subjective days. Outside, 11 hours had passed. He sat cross-legged at the center of the platform near the entrance, not training, not meditating in any way that required stillness of the body. His fingers moved slowly through hand-seal sequences he no longer needed to complete, muscle memory tracing the shapes of jutsu he had stopped casting years ago. It was a habit. A ritual. The way some people touched old scars when they needed to remember who they were. Gohan found him there on the morning of the 12th day. The boy had grown since the battle with Raditz. Not in height, not yet, though Naruto had no doubt that would come. He had grown in the way that children grow when grief has had its say with them. His eyes carried something heavy that had not been there before his father's death. He moved with the careful deliberateness of someone who had learned that the ground was not always trustworthy. You don't sleep, Gohan said. He was not accusing. He was simply noting a fact with the earnest precision of a child who had been raised to observe carefully. I do, Naruto said. Less than most. It used to worry the people around me. Now they just accept it. Gohan sat down a few feet away, close enough to be a companion, far enough to be respectful. He pulled his knees to his chest and looked at the wide expanse for a while. My dad is on Snake Way, he said finally. Running to King Kai's planet. Mom told me. She said it takes a really long time even for someone as fast as him. King Kai trains the best fighters in Otherworld, Naruto said. Your father will come back stronger than he left. That's not something I say to make you feel better. It's just true. Do you know King Kai? Naruto was quiet for a moment. I know of him. The divine networks are complicated. He and I exist in different jurisdictions, technically speaking. He glanced at the boy. Think of it like neighboring countries. We're aware of each other. We don't exactly share tea. Gohan almost smiled. It was a small thing, quickly controlled, but Naruto saw it and filed it away as something worth protecting. What are you doing when you move your hands like that? Gohan asked. Naruto looked down at his fingers, mid-seal, and consciously stilled them. Remembering, he said. There were people who taught me these. Most of them are gone. The seals are how I keep them close. Like a ritual? Exactly like a ritual. Gohan was quiet again. Then, I want to be strong enough to help next time. I know. Not just so Dad doesn't have to. So that people like you don't have to carry everything alone. He said it with the gravity of a promise he was making to himself more than to Naruto. Mom worries. She worries all the time now. I can see it when she thinks I'm not looking. And I don't know how to fix that except by being someone she doesn't have to worry about. Naruto turned to look at him directly. The boy held his gaze without flinching, which said something. You've got it almost right, Naruto said. But the goal isn't to become someone your mother doesn't worry about. She'll worry about you no matter how strong you get. That's just what she is. He paused. The goal is to become someone your mother trusts. Someone she can look at and know that even when things go wrong, you'll find your way back. Gohan absorbed this slowly, turning it over. Is that what you became? For the people you lost? The question landed somewhere quiet and deep. Naruto didn't answer immediately. Outside the chamber, the world was preparing for war it didn't fully understand yet. In here, in this stretched white silence, there was space to be honest. I tried to, he said. I'm still trying. Chi-Chi found Naruto at the edge of the Kame House garden an hour before sunset. He had been there for some time, she could tell. The grass around him held the impression of stillness, the way ground holds a shape when someone has been motionless long enough for the earth to take note of them. He was watching the water, which was very blue today, very calm, reflecting clouds that moved slowly east. She had a bowl of rice in one hand and a second one in the other. She had not planned to bring him dinner. It had simply happened, the way certain things happen when one's hands know what one's mind hasn't decided yet. Gohan said you talked to him this morning, she said, sitting beside him without asking permission. She offered him the second bowl. He took it. We did, Naruto said. He came to lunch different. Quieter. Good quiet, not the scared kind. She watched the water. Whatever you said to him, it helped. He did most of it himself. I just try not to get in the way. She made a small sound that was not quite skepticism, and not quite agreement. You're not going to take any credit, are you? She said. It was not a question. I'm going to eat your rice, he said, which I think is a fair trade. She looked at him sidelong. The evening light was generous to everyone it touched today, and it touched him without ceremony, just illuminating the lines of his face with the same even hand it used on the water and the grass. There were 3 faint marks on each cheek that she had noticed the first time she met him and had not yet asked about. She decided not to ask about them now either. He asked me this morning if Goku would be okay, she said. I said yes. I don't know if I was telling the truth. He'll be okay, Naruto said. You can't know that. No. But I've seen the quality of the man. He's the kind that finds a way back. The kind that the universe hasn't finished with yet because he's still in the middle of something. He looked at her. He's in the middle of being your husband and Gohan's father. That matters. It has weight. Chi-Chi was quiet. Her fingers tightened slightly around her bowl. I'm not naive, she said quietly. I know how dangerous this all is. I've known since before Gohan was born. I married someone who throws himself at the impossible and calls it a good Tuesday. A short breath, almost a laugh but not. I just didn't think I'd be the one sitting here holding things together while he was gone. You've always been the one holding things together, Naruto said gently. He just happens to be the one people notice. She looked at him. He was watching the water again, placid, like a man who had said a true thing and saw no reason to decorate it. That's the most accurate thing anyone has ever said to me, she said, very quietly. They sat together until the sun was fully down, and the water turned from blue to silver to dark, and neither of them felt the need to fill the silence with anything else. Bulma arrived at Kame House 3 days after Chi-Chi, with a capsule case in one hand and an expression that meant she had been designing something in her head for the entire drive and was in mild danger of talking at someone until they absorbed all of it. She had 3 satellites worth of data on the approaching Saiyans. She had cross-referenced Raditz scouter readings with the Capsule Corporation's own atmospheric sensing arrays. She had a timeline. 9 months, she told the assembled group, spreading her holographic readouts across the table in the Kame House kitchen. Give or take 2 weeks depending on their exact trajectory. Nappa and Vegeta are coming, and based on Raditz's readings they are significantly stronger than he was. Krillin stared at the numbers. How much stronger? The kind of stronger that ends conversations quickly, Bulma said. Naruto stood at the edge of the kitchen, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, reading the readouts with the calm attention of someone who had spent years in war rooms. Bulma had noticed that about him already. He listened differently than most people. Not waiting for his turn to speak, not cataloging what he'd say next. Actually listening. It was unusual enough to be slightly unnerving. 9 months is enough time to become very different people, Naruto said, without moving from his position. That's the charitable interpretation, Bulma said. It's the only one worth working with, he replied. She turned back to her readouts and began explaining the approach vector analysis. But part of her attention stayed with him, noted the way he moved when she shifted the holographic display, the micro-adjustment of his posture that said he was recalculating distances without being asked to. She had spent her life surrounded by people with exceptional combat instincts, and no gift for strategy. She had never encountered someone who appeared to have both in equal measure. After the meeting broke and everyone filtered out toward their separate corners of preparation, Bulma stayed at the table with her data and her coffee. Naruto did not leave. "You have a question," she said without looking up. "I have several. I'll start with the most useful one." He came to the table and sat across from her. "Your energy readings are excellent. The scouter data is clean. But you're modeling their approach like a physicist. I want to know if you can model it like a tactician." She looked up. "Meaning what?" "Meaning the data tells you where they're going. I want to know why they'll go there." Raditz knew where to find Goku within hours of reaching this solar system. That's not sensor precision, that's intelligence. They had information about this planet before they left. He held her gaze. "Who gave it to them?" Bulma set down her coffee. The question opened something she had not looked at yet. Not because she had avoided it, but because she had been so focused on the immediate problem that the structural one had waited, patient and larger. "You think there's a chain," she said slowly. "There's always a chain," Naruto said. "Power like that doesn't operate in isolation. Someone is coordinating. Someone has an interest in what happens here that goes beyond what Nappa and Vegeta think they want." He tapped the table gently. "The Dragon Balls are not a secret to every civilization in the cosmos. Raditz specifically mentioned them. That knowledge came from somewhere." Bulma was already pulling up a new analytical window, her mind shifting gears with the speed that had always been her best quality in a crisis. "You're more dangerous than you look," she said. "I get that a lot," he said simply, and there was something in his tone that was not quite humor and not quite warning, just the flat truth of a man who had been underestimated enough times to find it unremarkable. She started building the new model. He watched over her shoulder, and when she made an error in the third branch of the logic tree, he said so calmly and specifically, and she corrected it without ego because a correct model mattered more than being the only one to build it. They worked until past midnight. At some point Rashi left a plate of food at the door without knocking, and they both ate without stopping. Chapter 7. The Language of Strong Women. Yasaka's letter arrived without a physical carrier. It materialized between one heartbeat and the next on the windowsill of Naruto's room at Kame House, a scroll of paper that smelled faintly of foxfire, and the specific clean scent of Kyoto in early rain. The seal was a 9-pointed crest pressed in silver ink. He recognized it before he unrolled it. He read it twice, which was not something he usually did with correspondence. She had been watching the cosmic approach from Kyoto. The yokai faction had their own networks, their own listening instruments, not built of metal and wiring but of spirit sense and ley line resonance. They had tracked the incoming seance for weeks. They wanted to know what the strange foreign chakra user who had appeared in the East was planning to do about it. The letter was formally worded with the precise courtesy of someone who knew exactly how much weight each phrase carried. But the last line was different, plainer, stripped of ceremony the way a person strips off formal clothing when they decide the occasion calls for honesty. It said, "I remember the taste of that chakra. I have been trying to determine whether it frightens me or reassures me, and I have not yet succeeded." He sat with that for a long time. Then he wrote back. His letter was considerably shorter. He was not a man who wrote at length when directness served. He told her what he was preparing for. He told her where he stood, and why he had chosen to stand there. He told her that the approaching threat was not a supernatural event but a material one, and the yokai faction's resources would serve better as early warning infrastructure than as combat reserves for the initial contact. The last line of his letter said, "I don't know what my chakra tastes like from the outside. But I've been told it's unsettling by people I respect, so your uncertainty seems accurate." The scroll vanished from his hand before he finished tying it. Fox mail. Fast. He went back to work. Piccolo arrived at Kame House on a Tuesday. He landed outside without ceremony, which was very Piccolo of him, and stood at the door like a man who had calculated the exact minimum social gesture required to not be rude and had performed it precisely. He knocked once. He waited 3 seconds. He knocked again. Naruto opened the door. They looked at each other. "You've been training Gohan," Piccolo said. "Some," Naruto said. "Mostly I've been talking to him." "There's a difference. I want to train him." Naruto stepped aside to let him in. Piccolo crossed the threshold with the careful movement of a large man in a small space, conscious of his own presence in a way that was not entirely unlike awareness. "He needs both," Naruto said, closing the door. "You can give him combat. You can give him Saiyan-grade pressure, and the kind of expectation that makes people either break or build themselves around it." He crossed to the kitchen. "Tea?" Piccolo stared at him. "No," Piccolo said. "Right." Naruto put the kettle on anyway. "What I can give him is harder to quantify. The capacity to be afraid and act anyway. The reason to come back when you could just keep running." He looked at the Namekian. "Those two things need each other. A boy who only knows how to fight hard is not prepared for what's coming. A boy who only knows why he's fighting won't make it through the training." Piccolo was quiet. The kind of quiet that in anyone else might have been disagreement preparing itself, but in Piccolo was just thought. He had never been a man who argued with things that were true. "You're not a threat to this planet," he said eventually, and the way he said it made clear it was a conclusion he had reached at some point after much consideration, not a pleasantry. "No," Naruto said. "But you're also not from here." "No. Why are you staying?" The kettle began to sound. Naruto poured his tea. He held the cup with both hands for a moment, feeling the warmth of it. "Because I'm capable of making a difference, and I happened to be here when the need arrived," he said. "I've been in enough worlds to understand that combination is not coincidence. It's a kind of calling. I don't believe in ignoring callings." Piccolo sat down. He did not ask for tea again. "I'm going to take Gohan to the wilderness for his training," he said. "Hard terrain. Long duration. His mother will object." "She will," Naruto agreed. "I'm not asking your permission. You're asking my opinion." A pause. The closest thing Piccolo came to sheepishness was a slight contraction around the eyes. "He needs field experience," Naruto said. "Real difficulty. Not the kind you can rehearse." He drank his tea. "Take him. Talk to Chi-Chi first. You talk to her. She listens to you. She listens to everyone who gives her a real answer instead of a diplomatic one." He set his cup down. "Tell her the truth. Tell her it will be dangerous, and that you'll bring him back. She can handle truth. What she can't handle is being managed." Piccolo looked at him with an expression that contained several layers of calculation and arrived at something that was almost respect. "You understand women unusually well for someone your age," he said. "I had an interesting upbringing," Naruto said. Graphia Lucifuge stepped through a private dimensional gate in a parking lot outside a convenience store 40 kilometers from Kame House, which was extremely undignified and which she would not be mentioning to anyone. The gate behind her sealed with a sound like a page being turned. She straightened her uniform, adjusted her silver braid, and consulted the tracking trace she had placed during Naruto's brief visit to the Devil Territories 3 weeks ago. He had come to renegotiate a supply agreement on behalf of a minor shrine whose protective contract had lapsed. He had done it calmly, with the specific combination of absolute courtesy and absolute firmness that she associated with people who had long ago stopped needing to prove anything. She had been thinking about him in the weeks since, not with sentiment, with professional attention. He was a variable she could not classify and could not ignore. And both of those things irritated and intrigued her in equal measure. She found him in a field behind a small human research station, running through what appeared to be a combat form but was unlike any she had catalogued in the Devil archives. The movements were fluid to the point of looking improvised but carried the precision of something practiced 10,000 times. He was generating energy visible to her supernatural sight with every transition, blue, white, and dense, and it moved in patterns that bypassed the usual intake-output framework of any power system she knew. He stopped when he heard her footsteps. Not startled. Just aware. "Graphia Lucifuge," he said, turning. He was not out of breath, which she filed under points of data. "You could have sent word." I preferred to arrive unannounced, she said. It tends to reveal more. And what has it revealed? She studied him for a moment. That you're aware of your surroundings at a range I would estimate at roughly 2 kilometers. That you train outdoors in the open rather than in contained space, which suggests confidence or indifference. And that you've been sleeping less than 4 hours per night for the past several weeks, which shows in the quality of the energy you're generating, not poorly but differently than when you're fully rested. He looked at her steadily. You're remarkably well informed for someone who arrived unannounced. That is the point of arriving unannounced. She walked toward him. He did not step back or arrange himself into a more defended stance. He simply stood and watched her approach the way someone watches incoming weather, noting it without alarm. The underworld is watching the cosmic approach, she said. The great Satans are debating response posture. Sirzex favors observation and non-intervention. Others are less restrained. What do you favor? She paused. It was not a question most people asked her, because most people either assumed they knew what she favored or were afraid of finding out. I favor accurate information, she said. Which is why I am here. What do you want to know? Whether you intend to engage the incoming scions directly, and what your probability assessment of survival is for the humans currently committed to their defense. He was quiet for a moment. The field around them was full of the small sounds of a summer afternoon, insects, and wind and distant water. I will engage if the situation requires it, he said. The humans have 9 months. Some of them are already training at rates that would surprise you. Survival probability is not a useful metric this far out. The only useful variable right now is preparation quality. You didn't answer my question. I answered the part of it that matters. She looked at him for several seconds. He met her gaze without making it a contest. You are either the most pragmatic person I have ever met, she said, or the most deliberately elusive. Both tend to look the same from the outside, he agreed. She permitted herself the smallest fraction of a smile, which was far more than she gave most people. I will return, she said. There is more to discuss. The gate to the parking lot is still open, he said. 43 seconds before it closes. She was already turning. How did you know where I arrived? Dimensional gates leave an energy signature. Yours is particularly clean, which means high practice but also high formality. Formal people prefer not to appear in the middle of things. She stepped through the gate. Behind her, she heard him resume his training form, the quiet displacement of air that meant movement at a speed she would have found impossible to follow with ordinary eyes. She filed everything she had observed and walked to the car she had arranged on the other side. She recognized, looking forward to the next conversation. Chapter 8. Months like held breath. 3 months passed. The measure of them was not days or weeks but intensity, the specific texture of time that exists only during long preparation for known catastrophe. It tastes different from ordinary time. It has a kind of density to it, each morning carrying the full weight of all the mornings before it, stacked up and pressing forward. Naruto spent the first month in the field. He covered the major power points of the Earth's surface one by one, not all of them. The planet was too large and his time too precisely bounded for that, but the significant ones. The places where natural energy pooled. The old fault lines where the Earth's own spiritual pressure ran deepest. The mountain ranges and ocean trenches where the world stored its oldest memory. He mapped them the way a cartographer maps a new territory, carefully, with attention to what was there rather than what one expected to find. The Earth was remarkable, he concluded. It was small by cosmic standards and its human population had barely begun to touch the edge of what was possible. But it had a quality he recognized, having felt its echo in every world he had ever visited. It had grit. The kind of place that produces improbable people in response to impossible conditions. The kind of soil that, given enough time, grows the type of individual that forces the universe to recalibrate. He spent a great deal of his evenings at Kame House. Chi-Chi had settled into a temporary home base there while Gohan trained with Piccolo, which she had agreed to with better grace than almost anyone expected once Piccolo had done as Naruto suggested and told her the plain truth. She cooked for the household with the thoroughness of someone who handles anxiety by being useful, and the household ate extremely well as a result. She had started asking Naruto questions. Not about fighting. About administration. If the battle happens near populated areas, she said one evening over dinner, what's the evacuation priority? Everyone else at the table paused. Highest density first, he said. Then the places that can't move themselves. Hospitals. Schools. Capsule Corporation has a fleet, Bulma said from her end of the table. She had her tablet propped against the salt shaker. I've been modifying 3 of the carrier models. If we needed to move a significant population, we could. Given 48 hours notice. 36, Naruto said. Assume traffic. Assume panic. 24 if I can get Trunks' future systems, Bulma muttered, which earned her a look from Krillin that she ignored. Chi-Chi set down her chopsticks. I want to be useful during the battle. Not just after. You are, Naruto said. You're building the infrastructure that comes after. That's not lesser work. It's the work that determines whether there's a world worth defending when the fighting is done. She absorbed this the way she absorbed most things he said, seriously, turning it over. Rashi, who had been eating quietly and pretending not to listen, said, He's right, you know. He usually is, Bulma said, without looking up from her tablet, which I find professionally annoying. The second letter from Yasaka arrived in the 6th month. This one was longer. She had been gathering information, as he had asked, and she shared it with precision and without embellishment. The yokai network had confirmed 3 separate channels through which information about the Dragon Balls had circulated in cosmic intelligence markets. She named them. 2 were defunct. 1 was not. The living channel was connected to a broker-class entity that operated in what she described as the spaces between registered supernatural territories. Not devil. Not angel. Not aligned with any faction that had a seat at any of the major supernatural negotiating tables. The broker had been active for at least 60 years of Earth time. The last section of the letter shifted in register again, the way her first letter had, shedding formality the way a river sheds its banks when the water rises. She wrote, The fox in you is not the 9 tails. I have checked. The fox in you is older than the bijou. It is the kind of fox that exists before stories decide what foxes should be. I find that either very concerning or very interesting, and I have not yet determined which. He wrote back at once. He said, The broker information is excellent. Follow the active channel but do not make contact. I want to map the network before we move on any of it. And at the end, where she had established the habit of candor, the fox in me is not something I have a clean explanation for. I was told once by someone very old that I carry a kind of luck that attracts foxes. I suspect she meant it as both a compliment and a caution. He hesitated before sending the last line. It was more personal than he usually permitted in correspondence with someone he hadn't met face to face. He sent it anyway. Grayfear returned in the 7th month. This time she arrived on time, announced through a gate she opened properly in the middle of the field where he trained. He was waiting when she stepped through, which she found neither surprising nor annoying. Just accurate. She had brought information and a sparring request, which she delivered in that order. The information, Surzex had approved limited surveillance of the approach. The underworld would not commit forces but would not interfere with Earth's defense. There was a faction within the Devil Peerage that wanted the Scions to succeed, operating on the theory that reduced human population would create favorable conditions for supernatural territory expansion. Surzex did not share this view. He wanted it noted. The sparring request, she wanted to test her combat form against his chakra system. Not to defeat him. To learn. He agreed to both. They fought in the field for 2 hours at escalating intensity. She was exceptional. He had known she would be. The underworld's premier fighter did not hold that title through politics alone, but watching her operate was its own education. She combined raw power with technique in proportions he had seen in very few opponents. She was calculating mid-motion in ways that required both combat experience and analytical intelligence, which were rarer together than separately. She was also testing him, measuring his capacity at each intensity level, mapping his system with the methodical attention of a scientist who had decided the subject was worth understanding properly. He let her map some of it. Not all of it. When they stopped, she stood 10 feet from him with her hair loosened from its braid and her uniform showing the scorch marks of 2 near misses, and she looked at him with an expression he had not seen from her before. You're holding back at a ratio I estimate at roughly 80%, she said. More like 85, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, are you capable of fighting the Scions alone? I'm capable of stopping them, he said carefully. Alone is a different question. I don't prefer alone. Why? He looked at her. The evening was coming in from the east, long and golden. Because fighting alone produces a particular kind of person over time, he said. The kind that starts to measure the worth of everything by whether it can help them fight. I've spent years carefully not becoming that. Graphia studied him. Her silver eyes were quiet and specific. You are, she said slowly, genuinely unusual. So I've been told. I don't mean it as a generality. She began straightening her uniform. I mean that the combination of power at your level and priorities structured the way yours are is not something I have encountered before. Most entities of your capacity are either defined by their strength, or in active conflict with it. I used to be, he said. I spent a long time being defined by it. Or fighting it. It took a while to get to this. He looked at the last of the evening light. It took losing enough things to understand what was worth keeping. She tied her braid back in 3 clean motions. I will come again, she said. Monthly, if that suits you. It suits me, he said. She stepped back toward the gate. At the threshold she paused without turning around. For what it's worth, she said, I believe the humans will survive. Not only because of you. Partly because of the quality of the people around you. A pause. You tend to improve the people near you. That's not common. She stepped through. The gate sealed. He stood in the field for a while after. Chapter 9, The Weight of a Name. Amaterasu arrived at month 8 on a clear morning when the sky was the kind of blue that has no weather in it, just light going all the way up. She did not arrive with ceremony. No descending light, no divine signature, no forewarning that would require response. She simply walked through the front door of Kame House like a person who had decided the door was a reasonable way to arrive. She looked like a woman in her middle years. Tall. Hair that was black and then, at the ends, the color of late afternoon. Eyes that were gold in the center and darker at the rim. She wore formal clothing in an archaic style that was not quite any specific period but felt old the way certain buildings feel old, as though the structure itself had decided to stay. She looked at Naruto across the room. He looked back. I wondered, she said in Japanese, whether you would recognize me. Your signature has been visible to me since I arrived on this continent, he said, in the same language. I was waiting for you to decide it was time. A sound that was almost a laugh. You are patient. I've had practice. Bulma appeared from the kitchen doorway, looked at the stranger, looked at Naruto, noted the specific quality of the air in the room, and said, I'll make tea, with the excellent instincts of someone who recognized when a conversation needed to happen without her. Amaterasu sat in the main room. Naruto sat across from her. The morning moved around them without urgency. You carry the energy of a fox who has finished burning, she said. That is not an insult. It is a description of a particular quality. The kind that exists after the fire has gone all the way through something, and what remains is the pure element. I've been compared to foxes before, he said. Usually as a compliment. Once as a threat. Several times as an observation by people who couldn't decide which it was. Yasaka writes to me about you. He did not show surprise, which she noted. She tells me you respond to her letters with candor. This is not something she encounters often. Amaterasu tilted her head slightly. She also tells me the chakra in your letters carries warmth. Which is not something she expected and has not decided what to do with. And you, he said, are here because you've decided to evaluate that for yourself. I am here, she said, because the thing approaching this planet is a specific kind of problem. The cosmic destroyer variety. And this world sits in a position of significance in the spiritual cartography of the universe that most of its inhabitants are not yet aware of. She looked at him with those gold-rimmed eyes. The Dragon Balls are not the reason it matters. They are a symptom of the reason it matters. He leaned forward slightly. The Earth itself is a convergence point, she said. Not the only one in this galaxy, but one of the active ones. It generates individuals of extraordinary potential at a rate statistically improbable for a world of its age. Goku is not an anomaly of his species. He is a product of this soil, shaped by a world that manufactures miracles, and someone knows this. Several someones. Which is why the approach of these two Saiyans is not a simple resource raid. Whether they know it or not, they are being directed. Bulma returned with tea. She set it on the table and sat down at the edge of the room with the studied casualness of a person who had decided she was going to be part of this conversation and was positioning herself accordingly. Amaterasu looked at her. You are the intelligence infrastructure of this effort. Bulma straightened slightly. I prefer chief scientist and tactical architect, but yes. The goddess turned back to Naruto. She is correctly placed. I know, he said. The Divine Network is prepared to provide information support through the coming months, Amaterasu said. I will not commit forces to the field. That is not the correct intervention. But the information architecture matters more than any of you currently appreciate. Agreed. In exchange, she said, I want access to your training sessions. Not to learn. To observe. She held his gaze. The quality of your chakra is relevant to several questions I have been working on for a very long time. You are, if my assessment is correct, the first individual to carry what you carry in approximately 11,000 years. The room was very quiet. I'll consider it, he said. That is a reasonable answer, she said, and drank her tea with the unhurried manner of a being for whom time moved at its own pace. Bulma looked at Naruto. He looked at her. A conversation happened entirely in that look, the kind that develops between people who have spent weeks working in close quarters toward a shared goal. Hers said, that is an ancient Shinto goddess sitting in our kitchen. His said, I know. Hers said, and she's talking about you like you're a geological phenomenon. His said, that's roughly accurate, yes. She picked up her tea and said aloud, so? Information network. Let's talk specifics. And the morning went on. Krillin found Naruto on the roof that night. He had come up to think and found the roof already occupied, which was less surprising than it would have been a few months ago. He had grown used to the specific version of surprise that Naruto produced, the mild disorientation of finding someone where you hadn't expected them but should have. Busy day, Krillin said, sitting beside him on the edge. Every day recently. A literal goddess showed up for tea. She drinks it plain, Naruto noted. No sugar. No milk. Very black. Krillin processed this. Why does that feel like important character information? It usually is. Below them the water was dark and moving. The island was small and the sea was very large around it, and the sky above was full of stars that did not care about any of what was happening beneath them. Can I ask you something? Krillin said. You're going to anyway. Why here? Not why Earth. Why here specifically? Why with us? You could be anywhere. You could be doing this on your own terms from a position that doesn't involve living in Rashi's house and eating Chi-Chi's rice. Naruto was quiet for a moment. A long time ago, he said, I was in a war that took almost everyone I loved. Not because they were weak or careless. Just because that's what war does. He was looking at the water. Afterwards I spent a long time making myself stronger so that I would never be in that position again. And I did. I got strong enough that nothing could touch me through them. A pause. And then I realized that getting strong enough to protect people from the outside isn't the same as being with them. It's just a better cage. Krillin said nothing. Being here, in the kitchen, on the roof, at the table when someone needs to think out loud. That's not a strategy. It's just what it looks like when you actually care about something instead of just protecting it from a distance. The water moved below them. That's the most honest thing I've heard anyone say in a while, Krillin said quietly. Don't tell Rashi. He'll get sentimental. He already cried when Amaterasu said your tea was adequate. She said it was acceptable, which is not the same thing. He still cried. Naruto almost smiled. The water caught starlight and gave it back at a different angle, changed but recognizable. They sat there until the night moved past its middle point, two people on a small island keeping watch over something they had both decided, in their different ways, was worth the trouble. Chapter 10. Before the Sky Opens. 1 month before arrival. Gohan came back from his training with Piccolo changed in the way that a river changes after it has run through hard country. The shape was recognizable but the quality was different, deeper, with a current under it that had not been there before. He was still a child. He was also now something else that did not have a clean name. Chi-Chi held him for a very long time when he returned. Then she stepped back and looked at him with the specific clarity of a mother who is also a person and has been both long enough to know the difference. She saw what had changed and did not mourn it, not outwardly, because she was Chi-Chi and that was not how she processed things. She said, "You need a haircut?" And Gohan laughed, sudden and real, and the room got lighter. Naruto watched from the doorway. He did not interrupt. Later, when the house had settled into evening and Gohan was asleep with the thoroughness of the exhausted and Chi-Chi was sitting alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea she was not drinking, Naruto came and sat across from her. "He's ready," she said. "Not a question. He has everything he needs," Naruto said. "Whether it's enough depends on what's asked of him. That's always the variable you can't control ahead of time." "I know." She looked at her cup. "I've known that since before he was born. Since before I married Goku. I always knew the world was going to ask things of the people in my life that I couldn't prepare them for." She was quiet. "I just thought I'd have more time to try." "You gave him something Piccolo's training couldn't," Naruto said. "He knows what he's protecting." "Not abstractly. Specifically. He can feel it." "That's you?" She looked up at him. "He fights like someone who has something to come home to," Naruto continued. "That's different from fighting like someone who's trying to prove something, or survive something, or become something. It's better. It makes people do things that don't have a tactical explanation." A pause. "You built that." Chi-Chi was quiet for a long moment. "You have a gift for saying true things in ways that don't feel like consolation," she said. "Consolation usually isn't true," he said. "That's the problem with it." She stood and went to the stove and began reheating the tea with the purpose of someone who has decided the moment has been felt fully and now there are practical things to do. He recognized the movement. He had seen it in 100 different kitchens across 100 different worlds. "Tomorrow," she said, "I want to go over the evacuation routes again. Bulma's most recent model has 3 assumptions I think are wrong." "Which ones?" "The traffic modeling assumes rational behavior." "She assumed rational behavior in a crisis?" "I know." He stood. "I'll get the maps." They worked until past midnight, and the house held them, and outside the sky was very clear, and somewhere in that sky 2 points of light were moving that had not been there a year ago. 3 weeks before arrival, Naruto went alone to the highest ground he could reach within a day's travel, a ridge above the cloud line where the air was thin and the view was everything. He sat there and let the natural energy of the earth come to him, not gathering it, not storing it, just letting it speak. The planet was old in a way that had nothing to do with years. It was old the way things are old when they have been shaped by everything that has happened on them. Every great choice and every small one, every moment of extraordinary courage by someone whose name had been forgotten 1,000 years ago, all of it had left something, not a scar but a kind of resonance. He thought about the people below. Chi-Chi building evacuation systems with the focused energy of someone who had decided that preparation was its own form of hope. Bulma running models at midnight with tea going cold at her elbow. Krillin training with the specific determination of someone who knows he's outclassed and is going to show up anyway. Gohan carrying a weight too large for him and doing it without complaint. Graphia, precise and formidable, returning month after month because she had decided the question of him was worth investigating properly. Yasaka, writing letters that began with intelligence reports and ended with candor she could not quite keep out. Amaterasu, watching with those gold-rimmed eyes and asking questions no one else thought to ask. He thought about what the goddess had said. The earth manufactures miracles. He thought, yes. It does. I've been watching it happen. He thought, I've been part of it happening, which is not something I expected and is not something I know how to name yet. The sun was going down. The horizon was the color of a page where something important had just been written and the ink was still wet. He stayed until full dark. Then he went back down. There was work to do, and it mattered. All of it. That was the thing he kept discovering and kept being surprised by, though by now he should have known. It mattered. The tea and the maps and the evacuation routes and the letters and the training sessions and the conversations on rooftops and in kitchens and in fields where the light was going golden. It all mattered. And somewhere in the dark between stars, two shapes were moving, and the sky above the earth was still quiet, and in that quiet there was a last chance to become the people they needed to be. They were taking it. On the last night before the final month, Bulma knocked on his door. She came in without waiting for an answer, which was very Bulma, and sat on the single chair in the small room like she owned it, which was also very Bulma, and looked at him with the expression she wore when she had been thinking hard about something for a long time and had finally decided to say it. "I've been running probability models," she said, "and I want you to understand that I am aware of how cold-blooded that sounds, but it's how I process things, so please don't editorialize." "Okay," he said. "In the highest probability scenarios, you're the variable that changes everything. Not Goku. Not the Z fighters collectively. You." She held his gaze. "In those scenarios you take a level of damage that in a normal person would be lethal. I'm not a normal person. I'm aware of that. What I'm asking is whether you're prepared for the cost." He looked at her for a moment. Bulma had the kind of intelligence that did not flinch from its own conclusions, which was one of the things he had come to respect most about her. "Yes," he said. "Just yes? The cost is what makes it mean something," he said. "If it were easy it would just be a demonstration." She was quiet. Then she stood up from the chair and looked at him with an expression that had several things in it, some of which she was probably not aware of and some of which she was choosing not to address right now. "Don't die," she said. "We've put a lot of infrastructure into this operation, and losing the central variable would be logistically catastrophic. That's the most practical case for continued survival I've ever heard," he said. "I thought you'd appreciate the framing." She went to the door. At the threshold she paused. "Also, for what it's worth, the people in this house are not just infrastructure. They're going to miss you if something goes wrong. I want that on record." She left before he could respond, which he suspected was intentional. He sat alone in the small room and heard the house breathing around him, the soft sounds of people sleeping and the water outside and the distant sky doing whatever the sky does at night. The month ahead was going to be the hardest of all of them. He was ready, not because he was certain, not because he was unafraid, but because readiness, he had learned, was not a feeling. It was a choice you made with the full knowledge of what was coming, and then remade every morning, and then remade again. He had been making it for a long time. He would keep making it. The sky outside was full of stars. In exactly 31 days, 2 of them would begin to move. He watched the window until the light changed, and then he went back to work. Act 3, The Sky Opens. Chapter 11, Arrival. They came in at dawn, not because they chose the hour for its symbolism. The Scions did not think in terms of symbolism. They came at dawn because the trajectory of their approach pods brought them into the upper atmosphere at precisely that angle relative to the sun, and the pods shed their entry friction in long orange streaks that lit the horizon from horizon to horizon like something the world was trying to say. Naruto stood on the roof of Kame House and watched the streaks cross the sky. Behind him, the door opened. Bulma came out first, tablet in hand, hair unfinished, reading the approach vectors with the focused calm she wore when fear had been converted entirely into function. Chi-Chi came second, already dressed, already composed in the particular way she was composed when she had decided the time for feeling things was temporarily suspended in favor of the time for doing things. Krillin came last, because Krillin had been awake since midnight running katas on the beach and had not been to sleep at all. None of them said anything for a moment. The streaks descended and separated. 2 pods. They were already tracking differently on the descent, which meant 2 different landing sites, which Bulma had predicted and which was worse than a single convergence point because it split response options. Eastern continent, Bulma said, reading. They're not coming here first. They're going to the primary population centers. Nappa always goes for the loudest entrance, Naruto said. He had reviewed everything they had on both Scions over the past several months. Nappa was straightforward in the specific way that large, powerful things are straightforward, all force and preference for direct lines. Vegeta was not. The other pod, Chi-Chi said. Different vector, Naruto said. He's not going to the same place. He's going somewhere he's already chosen, and he chose it before he entered the atmosphere. That's not a coincidence, Bulma said. No. Inside the house, Rashi had already activated the emergency frequency Bulma had set up 2 months ago. Somewhere on the east continent, Tien, Kaiatsu, and Yamcha were already moving toward intercept. Piccolo, who needed no frequency to know when the sky was wrong, was already in the air. Naruto looked at Chi-Chi. Gohan stays here, he said. Until I determine the threat level in person. That's not negotiable, and it's not a comment on his capability. It's sequencing. She nodded once, precise and controlled. You're going, Krillin said. I'm going to assess Vegeta first, Naruto said. Nappa is manageable. Vegeta is the variable that needs a read before anyone else engages. What does that mean, a read? It means I need to know what he actually wants. Not what he says he wants. What he came here for underneath the stated purpose. Naruto stepped off the roof, and for a half-second was simply standing on air in the way he always moved when he stopped performing the effort of gravity. Stay on the frequency. Keep Gohan off the field until you hear from me. He went up before anyone could respond. The sky was very large above the island, and the 2 streaks of vapor from the entry pods were already dispersing on the wind, and the morning was cold and clear and tasted of salt, and the specific alertness that belongs to moments when the world has changed and not yet decided what it is going to change into. Chi-Chi watched him go. He moves like he's been doing this forever, Krillin said quietly. He has been, Bulma said. That's sort of the thing about him. She went back inside to her screens. Chi-Chi stayed on the roof a moment longer. The vapor trails were thin now, dissolving, leaving a sky that looked entirely ordinary from a distance, and was not ordinary at all. She went inside and started making breakfast. There would be a long day on the other side of this morning, and the people in this house would need to eat. Vegeta's pod came down in a dry basin 40 kilometers from the nearest settlement, which was either a concession to operational security, or a sign that he had chosen his landing site the same way a chess player chooses a square, not for what it was but for what it let him do next. Naruto reached the site before the dust had fully settled. He stood on a ridge above the basin and watched the pod hiss and cool. The outer shell was scorched from re-entry, matte black and dimpled from micro-impact debris in the outer atmosphere. It was a practical object, not an impressive one, which said something about the civilization that produced it. The Saiyans were not interested in appearing powerful. They were interested in being powerful. The hatch opened. Vegeta stepped out into the morning light of a planet he had come to destroy, and looked at it the way a man looks at something he has already decided the worth of. He was smaller than the intelligence reports had suggested, not in the intimidating way of something compact and dense but simply smaller, in a way that made the energy radiating off him feel larger by contrast. His armor was clean. His expression was the expression of someone who had not yet encountered anything worth adjusting to. He looked up at the ridge. Naruto did not hide. There was no strategic value in it, and he had long ago decided that revealing one's presence on one's own terms was preferable to being found. Vegeta's eyes found him and held. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then Vegeta said in the flat tone of someone reading from a list, "You're not from this planet." "No," Naruto said. "Your energy signature is not in any catalog I have access to." "It wouldn't be. You came here deliberately," Vegeta said. It was not a question. "As did you." Vegeta studied him with the specific attention of a man accustomed to measuring opponents on a single axis, power level, and finding that axis insufficient in this case. His scouter, Naruto noted, was not on his face. He had either left it in the pod or discarded it, which was the first genuinely interesting data point of the morning. "What are you?" Vegeta said. "A complication," Naruto said. The Prince of Science was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it was a smile that had very little warmth in it but was genuinely amused in the way that dangerous people are amused when they encounter something they did not anticipate. "That is," Vegeta said, "the first honest thing anyone on this planet has said to me." "I tend to start with honest," Naruto said. "It saves time. It also invites violence. So does dishonesty. At least this way we know where we stand." Vegeta came up the slope toward him, not rushing, not performing threat, just closing the distance with the assurance of someone who had never had reason to approach anyone with caution. He stopped 10 feet away. The energy between them was the kind that two substantial fires produce when brought into proximity, not explosive but pressurized, each one aware of the other at a level that bypassed the ordinary senses. "You're trying to talk me out of this," Vegeta said. "I'm trying to give you complete information before you make a decision," Naruto said. "What you do with it is yours. Generous. Practical. You came here for the Dragon Balls. I want to know why before you spend the next several hours fighting people who don't have them." Something shifted in Vegeta's expression. "Not much. A fractional thing, barely visible, the kind of micro-adjustment that people make when a conversation has touched something they did not expect to be touched. The Dragon Balls can grant any wish," Naruto continued. "Including the kind that someone with Saiyan pride would be too proud to state openly but has been carrying since he was old enough to understand what was lost." Vegeta's eyes narrowed. "Don't," he said very quietly. "I'm not going to say it," Naruto said. "I'm just noting that I know it exists. And that if that's the wish at the end of this, then everything you're about to do is in the service of something that matters to you more than the mission. Which means you have a decision to make before the first punch is thrown." The basin below them was very still. A bird somewhere in the scrub had gone silent the moment Vegeta's pod landed, and had not resumed. "You," Vegeta said slowly, "are either suicidal or the most confident thing I have encountered in a decade." "Probably some of both," Naruto said. Vegeta looked at him for a long time. "Nappa will engage regardless of what I decide here," he said finally. "I know. Nappa is the simpler problem. You intend to stop him." "I intend to give him options," Naruto said. "What he does with them will determine what happens next." Another long silence. The sun had fully risen now and the basin was bright with ordinary morning light, throwing sharp shadows from every stone. "I'm not going to stand down," Vegeta said. "I know. But I'll watch," he said. "What you do with Nappa." "I'll watch." It was not a concession. It was a test. Naruto recognized the distinction. "That's all I'm asking," he said. He left the ridge and went north toward the sound of something large beginning to happen, and behind him Vegeta stood in the morning light and did not follow, and that, Naruto understood, was the first domino in a sequence that had not yet found its final shape. Chapter 12: The Shape of Force. Nappa had found a field. He had found it the way a storm finds a field, without looking for it, simply by moving in a direction and arriving. It was a large flat plain on the eastern edge of the continent, the kind of terrain that had probably been farmland at some point, the kind that in several years would be farmland again, given time and the specific human stubbornness that replants things. He was not alone. Tien stood at the far end of the field. Yamcha was to his left, and the way Yamcha stood told the whole story, the particular posture of a fighter who has calculated the situation and found the numbers wrong but has decided to be here anyway. Kaiatsu floated above them all, small and determined and radiating the specific energy of someone very brave and not very large. Piccolo was in the air to the north, watching. He would not intervene unless it became necessary, which was not cowardice. It was discipline, the discipline of a warrior who understood resource management, who knew that spending himself early meant being absent when it mattered most. Nappa was talking. He was explaining, in the leisurely manner of someone who genuinely enjoys the preamble to destruction, the specific ways in which the defenders of this planet were inadequate. He used energy readings and comparative power levels and historical precedent with the confidence of a man who had done this before enough times to have developed a routine. He was not wrong about the numbers. He was wrong about what the numbers meant. Naruto arrived without announcement. He came in from the west at an altitude that put him level with Nappa's sideline, and he stopped at a distance that was close enough to be present, and far enough to be deliberate. He had no weapon visible. His hands were at his sides. He was wearing the same clothes he had been wearing when he left Kame House that morning, which was either confidence or indifference, and the distinction did not matter. Nappa turned to look at him with the slow movement of a very large person who has just registered something unexpected and is taking his time deciding what to do about it. "New one," Nappa said. "Hello," Naruto said. "You're not from here." "That seems to be the most interesting thing about me today," Naruto said. "I've been told it twice already." Nappa's brow furrowed. He was not a stupid man, precisely, But he was a man who had spent most of his life in situations where intelligence was less useful than size, and he had optimized accordingly. What are you doing here? Nappa said. Giving you a chance, Naruto said. Which I understand is not what you expected. A chance. Nappa said the words like he was tasting something unfamiliar. A chance for what? To leave, Naruto said. Take your pod. Take whatever heading you choose. Don't come back. Tien, at the far end of the field, was very still. He had fought enough to know when the center of gravity in a situation had shifted, and he was watching it shift now, watching the large alien's expression cycle through dismissal and uncertainty in a way that was genuinely surprising. You're serious, Nappa said. I'm always serious, Naruto said. It saves time. You can't beat me. Let's find out, Naruto said simply. The blow came fast. Nappa was genuinely fast for his size, faster than his profile suggested, and the punch carried enough force to change the local geography. It crossed the distance between them in a fraction of a second. Naruto moved. Not backward. Not sideways. He stepped inside the arc of the punch with the precise economy of someone who had spent time with a blow of that speed many times before, not flinching, not overmanaging, just reading the line of force and removing himself from it with a half step that put him beside Nappa's arm rather than in front of it. He used one hand. Open palm. Applied to the back of Nappa's elbow at the exact moment of maximum extension. The force redirected. Nappa's own momentum turned against him, and he went into the ground with the sound of several things happening simultaneously that were not supposed to happen simultaneously. The field absorbed him up to the waist. Dust. Silence. Birds that had already fled during the first appearance of the pod. Tien's mouth was open. Yamcha made a sound that was not a word. Nappa rose from the crater with the specific expression of a man whose model of the world has just been updated by direct experience. There was no dismissal left in his face. There was something else, something that in another context might have been respect but had not yet decided whether it was prepared to go that far. That's not possible, Nappa said. Most things worth doing aren't, Naruto said. The second exchange was harder. Nappa came without the leisureliness of the first approach, came with the genuine intent of someone who has switched from demonstration to effort. He was very strong. He was the kind of strong that comes from decades of accumulation, genetics and training stacked on top of each other until the result was not a person in the ordinary sense but something closer to a theorem about force. Naruto met him, not by matching force with force, which would have been the obvious approach, and which was obvious precisely because it was less efficient. He met him by moving through the attacks the way water moves through rocks, finding the spaces, using the angles, applying his own power not in direct opposition but in the places where Nappa's power briefly exceeded its own structural integrity. He was not unhurt. 2 blows landed, one to the ribs and one across the shoulder, and both of them carried enough energy to be felt even through chakra reinforcement. He let himself feel them. It was important to feel them. They were information. The fight lasted 4 minutes. At the end of 4 minutes, Nappa was on the ground in a different crater from the first one, lying on his back looking at the sky of a planet he had come to destroy and finding that the sky looked approximately the same from this angle as it had from the upright one. Naruto stood at the edge of the crater and looked down at him. That's the offer again, he said. Leave. Don't come back. Nappa was breathing. It was effortful, but it was breathing. He looked at the figure above him with the expression of someone recalibrating an entire conceptual framework. Who are you? Nappa said. Someone who would prefer not to have done more than that, Naruto said. He meant it. He was not performing restraint. He genuinely had no interest in doing more damage than the situation required. A long silence. Nappa looked at the sky. Vegeta, he said finally, not to Naruto, to the air. The answer came from the ridge to the south, where Vegeta had arrived at some point during the fight, standing with his arms crossed, watching with an expression that contained the same fractional shift Naruto had seen in the basin. Get up, Nappa, Vegeta said. I said get up. Nappa got up. Slowly. With the specific dignity of a very large man accepting a very large piece of information. Vegeta looked at Naruto across the field. Well, Vegeta said. That was instructive. I hoped it might be, Naruto said. The rest of that morning was complicated. Complicated in the specific way that moments are complicated when the expected narrative has been interrupted and none of the participants are entirely sure which track they are now on. Tien and Yamcha held their positions because they were fighters and fighters hold positions until told otherwise. Piccolo descended from the north and landed 50 meters from Naruto without saying anything, which was Piccolo communicating approval through proximity. Nappa sat on the edge of his crater and looked at his hands. Vegeta came down from the ridge and stood in the middle of the field, and it was impossible to know what he was thinking because Vegeta had spent his entire life ensuring it was impossible to know what he was thinking. But he was standing. Not fighting. Standing and looking at the sky over this planet he had come to end, and the sky was very blue and very ordinary. Naruto came to stand beside him. Not too close. The appropriate distance for standing beside a man who has not yet decided what he is. The Dragon Balls, Vegeta said. I can tell you where all 7 of them are, Naruto said. Locating them doesn't require a fight. And the wish, that's yours to make. I'm not going to tell you what to wish for. You know what I want. I know what you need, Naruto said carefully. Those might be the same thing. I'm not sure yet. Vegeta was quiet for a moment. The wind came across the field from the east. If I use the Dragon Balls and leave, Vegeta said, the world you're protecting goes on. Yes. And if the thing behind this mission decides to send something else, then I deal with that when it arrives. Vegeta looked at him sidelong. You know there's something behind this. I've known for months, and you're not afraid. I'm cautious, Naruto said. Which is more useful? Another silence. Longer. You're a strange thing, Vegeta said finally. It was the closest he was going to come to a compliment, and they both understood that. So I've been told. I want the Dragon Balls, Vegeta said. All 7. And I want them gathered before we discuss terms. 2 are within 50 kilometers of this location, Naruto said. Bulma has the locator. We can have all 7 together by nightfall. Then we'll talk at nightfall, Vegeta said. He walked to the edge of the field and sat down on the ground with his back against a stone outcrop and looked at the landscape of the planet he was no longer actively trying to destroy and found, he would later acknowledge to no one, that it was less terrible than he had expected. Chapter 13, The Gathering. Bulma arrived with the Dragon Radar 2 hours after Naruto's signal. She had packed it the night before, along with a go bag of equipment she had assembled over the past 8 months on the assumption that the day would come when she would need to be mobile and functional very quickly. She landed the capsule car on the edge of the field, looked at the assembled scene, ran a rapid mental inventory of everything she was seeing, and went immediately to Naruto. The big one's still alive, she said, not quite a whisper. Nappa chose to stay out of it, Naruto said. He's reassessing his position. And the other one? Vegeta wants the Dragon Balls. To destroy the planet with? To make a wish. She studied him. You know what the wish is. I have a theory. I'd rather confirm it before discussing it. She looked across the field at where Vegeta sat against his rock with the specific quality of stillness that very powerful people have when they are not fighting. A stillness that is not peace but its own kind of pressure. He's smaller than I expected, she said. Most things that can change a situation are, Naruto said. She took out the Dragon Radar and turned it on. The device beeped softly, mapping the 7 signals across the continent. 2 were close. 3 were within a day's travel. 2 were further. I can have a team on the far 2 within 3 hours, she said. I'll call Capsule Corporation. We have aerial units on standby. Do that. She was already on her phone, walking back to the capsule car with the purposeful stride of a woman who had spent the past 9 months preparing for exactly this, and found the actual arrival of it almost clarifying. The abstract had become concrete, and the concrete, she had always found, was easier to handle. Abstract problems lived in the future. Concrete ones lived right here and could be worked on directly. Tien approached from the far side of the field. He moved carefully, not toward Vegeta and Nappa, not with aggressive posture, just toward Naruto, with the directness of a man who had questions and had decided the time for holding them was over. What happened? He said. We're gathering the Dragon Balls, Naruto said. I saw the fight. What happened in the fight? I asked Nappa to leave. He tested the offer. I demonstrated that it was genuine. Tian looked at him for a long moment. He was a man who had been training longer than most people on this planet, and who had spent that time developing a comprehensive understanding of the gap between his own capacity and what the universe was capable of producing. He did not experience that gap with resentment. He experienced it the way a good craftsman experiences a master's work, with recognition and the particular seriousness of someone who is taking notes. You didn't kill him, Tian said. No. That was a choice. Everything is a choice. A lot of people would disagree with that choice. A lot of people aren't here, Naruto said. Not dismissively. Just with the flat accuracy of a man making an observation. The ones who are here get to weigh in. Yamcha had drifted over by now, maintaining the careful posture of someone who was going to be present and not make any sudden movements. He looked at Nappa from a distance. Is he going to try again? Yamcha said. I don't think so, Naruto said. He's thinking. Give him room to think. What's he thinking about? Whether the thing he's been doing has been worth it. Naruto looked at the large Saiyan sitting on the crater's edge. That's a question worth being quiet for. The dragon radar beeped in Bulma's hand across the field. The morning moved forward. The 5 closest Dragon Balls came in by mid-afternoon. Bulma organized the retrieval operation with the same methodical energy she brought to everything, dispatching capsule corp units, coordinating with the radar, managing the logistics of moving magical artifacts across a continent with the calm practicality of someone who had decided that the extraordinary nature of the task was no reason to be disorganized about it. She had set up a mobile workstation at the edge of the field, running 4 streams of data simultaneously while also directing retrieval teams by earpiece and also, somehow, eating a sandwich. Naruto had noticed that about her early on. She did not stop eating when things were stressful, which was actually the correct behavior, and was more uncommon than it should have been. Piccolo had gone to check on the retrieval operation for the 6th Dragon Ball, which was in a mountain range to the northeast and required aerial capability. He had not said he was going. He had simply gone, which was also very Piccolo. Vegeta had not moved from his rock. He had not spoken to anyone else. He had not threatened anyone. He had watched the operation unfold with the focused attention of a man who was building a model of something and was collecting data toward it. Occasionally he looked at Naruto, and his expression contained the same fractional complexity it had contained since the basin. Nappa had, at some point in the early afternoon, gotten up from his crater and walked to the capsule car and looked at it for a very long time. Bulma had noticed and had gone over and explained its function with the particular version of her lecture voice she used when she was explaining things to people she was not entirely sure were safe but had decided to treat as if they were because anything else was impractical. He had listened. He had asked 3 questions, all of them technically specific, which surprised her. She had answered them accurately. At some point they were, improbably, standing side by side looking at the capsule car's engine schematic on her tablet. Naruto observed this from across the field and did not say anything. Chi-Chi arrived at 4 in the afternoon. She drove up in a vehicle from the nearest town, because Chi-Chi did not capsule car and never had, and she got out with a basket and looked at the assembled scene with the specific expression of a woman who has prepared for the worst and is deciding what version of the worst this actually is. She found Naruto and looked at him. Gohan, she said. Is fine, he said. Still at Kame House. I'll tell you when the field is stable enough for him to come. She looked at Vegeta on his rock. That's him. That's him. He doesn't look like what I expected. He never does. She turned back to him. What's in the basket? Food. If people are going to be standing around in the field all day, they should eat. Chi-Chi. Don't Chi-Chi me. I've seen your ribs from the impact at the shoulder. You've got 3 bruised bones at minimum and you haven't treated them because you've been managing everything else. He looked at her. Sit down, she said, with the authority of someone who has delivered this instruction to injured people many times and had a 100% success rate. He sat. She produced, from the basket, a medical kit alongside the food, and dealt with his shoulder with the quick competence of a woman who had married a fighter and learned long ago to keep supplies on hand. Her hands were steady. Her face was focused. You're good at this, he said. I'm good at a lot of things people don't notice, she said simply. Hold still. He held still. From across the field, Bulma glanced over, took in the scene, and smiled very briefly before turning back to her tablet. Piccolo returned with the 6th Dragon Ball at 5:30. The 7th took until nearly 7, because it had ended up in the ocean and required a different kind of retrieval, and Krillin was, it turned out, extremely capable in water, which nobody had thought to factor in but which resolved the situation efficiently. By the time all 7 were laid out on the grass in the center of the field, the sun was low and the shadows were long, and the entire assembly had the quality of something that had been building for a long time and had now, finally, arrived at its pivot. The Dragon Balls glowed. Even before the summoning call, they had a quality to them that was more than physical, a warmth that was not heat, a presence that was not quite weight. They were old objects with old purpose, and they communicated that in the way that old purposeful things always do, by simply being themselves without apology. Vegeta came forward. He walked to the edge of the circle of Dragon Balls and looked at them for a long moment. The assembled group gave him room. Not out of fear, though fear was present in several of them and was honest and correct given the circumstances. Out of the recognition that this moment belonged to whoever had the courage to stand in it. You know the words, Naruto said. He stood at the edge of the gathering, not at the center, not claiming the moment. I know the words, Vegeta said. A pause. What is the wish? Tien said quietly from the back of the group. He was not challenging. He was asking. Vegeta did not turn around. He looked at the Dragon Balls, and the expression on his face was the most unguarded it had been since his paw touched the earth. Saiyan planet, he said. Vegetacii? Another pause. The wish is to know whether any Saiyans survived. Not from Frisia's forces. Not from the diaspora. Pure-blooded survivors. The field was very quiet. That's not immortality, Yamcha said, and the surprise in his voice was genuine. No, Vegeta said. He made no further comment on this. He spoke the words. They were in a language none of the humans knew and most of the non-humans only partially, a language that was old enough to have the quality of being slightly outside of ordinary space when spoken aloud. The Dragon Balls responded. The sky did what the sky always does when Shinran is summoned. It turned the specific dark that is not night but something older and more deliberate. The color of spaces between stars where light has not yet decided to go. The clouds moved. The wind went still. Shinran rose. He was enormous in the way that certain things are enormous not just in measurement but in concept, the way a great mountain is enormous, the way a deep ocean is enormous, not just large but present in a manner that ordinary large objects are not. His eyes were the color of old fire. State your wish, he said. Vegeta stated it. His voice did not shake. Shinran was silent for 3 seconds that were not quite ordinary seconds. Your wish is beyond what this set of Dragon Balls can answer with certainty, Shinran said. However, I can tell you this. The answer to the question you are asking is not no. The field absorbed this. Vegeta absorbed it. His posture did not change. His expression did not change in any way that most of the observers could have described. But something in his bearing shifted, some structural thing that had been holding a particular shape for a very long time, and it shifted the way something shifts when the load it has been carrying is not removed but is redistributed, when the same weight sits differently. Your wish, Shinran said, has been answered to the extent of my power. He departed. The sky came back. The Dragon Balls rose and scattered to the corners of the world again, orange light arcing in 7 directions. And then the field was just a field, ordinary and grass-colored in the evening light, and the people in it were just people, standing with the particular stillness of those who have witnessed something that has not yet finished being understood. Chapter 14. After the Dragon. Nobody spoke for a while. This was appropriate. There are moments that require silence not because they are sacred but because language moves more slowly than experience, and needs time to catch up. Everyone in the field was processing at their own speed, through their own framework, and the silence gave them room for it. Vegeta stood where he had been standing when the dragon left. He had not moved. He was looking at the space where the Dragon Balls had been, which was now just grass pressed flat by the slight atmospheric disturbance of their departure. Naruto went to him. He did not say anything immediately. He stood beside the Saiyan Prince the way he had stood beside him before, close enough to be present, far enough to be respectful, in the manner of someone who understands that proximity can be more useful than words. After a long time, Vegeta said, "You knew what the wish was going to be." "I suspected." "When?" "When I realized the intelligence about this planet came from an old channel. One that knew about the Dragon Balls long before Raditz did. Someone pointed your fleet toward Earth specifically because the Dragon Balls are the only objects in accessible space that can answer a question like that." Naruto paused. "Someone wanted you to come here. Wanted you to make exactly this wish." Vegeta turned to look at him. "Why?" "That's the question I've been building toward for 9 months, Naruto said. "I don't have the complete answer yet. But I have the shape of it." "Tell me." "Not yet. There are pieces I need to confirm." He met the prince's eyes. "But I'll tell you this. Whoever or whatever has been arranging this has an interest in what you do next. Which means your next choice is more significant than you might think." Vegeta was quiet. "You're asking me to wait," he said. "I'm asking you to not make any decisions tonight that close doors permanently." Another silence. "Longer." "Nappa," Vegeta said. "He can stay as long as he's not a threat," Naruto said. "I think he'd like to stay." "He would," Vegeta said, with a note that contained layers, some of which were old and some of which were recently updated. "He's been looking for an exit for years. He wasn't going to take it while I was committed to the mission. Now that I'm not." A pause. "He can stay." "All right. I'll need somewhere to think." "I know a mountain," Naruto said. "Good gravity. Very few people. Reasonable access to the infrastructure we're going to need going forward." "You're already planning what comes after this." "I'm always planning what comes after," Naruto said. "It's a habit. I've had it since I was young, and it has never entirely stopped being useful." The evening was coming in fully now. The field was getting dark and the first stars were visible in the east, and somewhere in that sky the Dragon Balls were finding their new resting places. Bulma had packed her equipment. Chi-Chi had distributed the contents of her basket with the efficiency of a woman who had decided that everyone in this field, regardless of their origin or their afternoon, needed to have eaten something before nightfall. Even Nappa had been handed a container of rice, which he had looked at for a moment with an unreadable expression before eating it with the careful attention of someone tasting something new. Krillin came to stand beside Naruto as Vegeta walked away. "That went differently than I expected," Krillin said. "Most things do," Naruto said. "You knew. You knew the whole time that he wasn't just here to fight." "I knew there was something under the stated mission. I didn't know what it was until the basin." "The basin," Krillin repeated. "When you looked at him, and just talked to him." "His scouter wasn't on his face," Naruto said. "A Saiyan elite removes his scouter when he doesn't want to know the number. When the number isn't the point." He paused. "He didn't want to fight me. He wanted to be talked to. As a person, not a power level." Krillin was quiet for a moment. Then, "That might be the saddest thing I've heard all year. Or the most hopeful," Naruto said. "Depending on what you do with it." Chi-Chi found him at the edge of the field after everyone else had begun organizing transportation back. She came without pretense, the way she did most things, directly and without ceremony, and stood beside him looking at the last of the evening light on the horizon. "Goku," she said. "He's still on Snake Way," Naruto said. "He'll make it to King Kai. He'll train. He'll be ready to come back. But he won't need to come back for this." "No." She absorbed this. "Not with relief, not exactly. With the complex thing that exists when an outcome is good but reorders several things you had organized yourself around. He was going to come back and save everyone," she said quietly. Not bitterly. Just accurately. "He'll still come back," Naruto said. "And there will be things that need saving. The situation here today was one battle. What's behind it is something else." She looked at him. "You're telling me this isn't over." "I'm telling you this is the end of the beginning," he said. "The actual work is what comes next." She was quiet for a long moment. "Gohan," she said. "He's going to want to know. Tell him everything. He's earned that. And Goku. When he comes back. Goku is going to need to find his place in a situation that moved without him," Naruto said carefully. "That's going to be its own adjustment. He'll need you to already know what happened and why, so you can help him find his footing." She looked at him with the expression she wore when he had said something that was also about them, about her specifically, without pretending to be general. You do that, she said. Say the thing that's also the other thing. I try to be accurate, he said. You're accurate in multiple directions at once. That's the most diplomatic description I've received for it. She almost smiled. The horizon took the last of the direct sunlight, and what remained was the long blue-gray of early evening, soft and directionless. Come to dinner, she said. Not tonight. Tomorrow. Bring whoever needs feeding. Gohan will want to see you. I'll be there, he said. She nodded once, which was Chi-Chi's equivalent of a significant statement, and walked back toward the cars. Chapter 15. The Shape of What Follows. The letters came the next morning, both of them. At the same time. Through different methods. Yasaka's scroll arrived the way it always did, between breaths, on the windowsill of wherever he was, carrying the scent of Kyoto and morning rain. It was longer than her previous letters and the intelligence section was extensive. She had identified the active channel Naruto had asked her to trace. She had mapped 3 nodes of the network. She had done it without making contact, as he had asked, and the restraint was visible in the letter, the specific texture of someone who had wanted to move faster and had chosen not to. The last section was 3 lines. She wrote, "The dragon summoning was visible from the yokai network. We monitored it in real time." What Shinran said about the Saiyan survivors is not surprising to those of us who have maintained archives of the outer cosmic cartography. There are things Vegeta will need to know when he is ready to know them. I can provide those things if you think it useful, and then, I would like to meet. Not through correspondence. I have been writing to a chakra signature and a set of words for months, and I find I want to know if the person matches. Amaterasu's message came differently. It came as light, brief and specific, the kind of divine communication that carries content without medium. It arrived behind his left eye in the manner of a thought that is too structured to have been his own. It said, "I watched yesterday." The broker entity moved after the dragon's summoning. It left a trail. The trail leads somewhere I expected and somewhere I did not. When you have dealt with the immediate aftermath, come to where you and I spoke last. There is more to tell. He sat with both messages for a while. The morning was bright and ordinary, the kind of morning that the day before had been preparing for without knowing it. He wrote to Yasaka, "Yes. Meet. Tell me when and where." He did not add anything at the end. He thought about it. He decided the absence of the usual closing line was its own kind of statement. He sent the scroll. Vegeta had taken the mountain. He had gone there the night before and had not come down, which was expected. Naruto had given him coordinates and a brief description and had not added instructions, because Vegeta was not a person who responded to instructions and the attempt would have been worse than useless. He went up on the second day. Vegeta was at the highest point, sitting on a flat rock that looked west over everything the altitude could offer. He was not meditating. He was simply present in a place that had the quality of somewhere a person could be present in without being required to perform anything. Naruto sat down on a nearby rock without being invited. Vegeta did not tell him to leave. "Frieza," Vegeta said, after a while. "Yes. He's the one behind the direction." "He's one of the ones," Naruto said. "He has his own relationship with the Dragon Balls that predates your mission. But yes, he's part of the architecture. Not the whole of it." "What else?" "Something older," Naruto said. "Something that has been interested in this planet for much longer than Frieza's operation has existed." He looked at the horizon. "The Earth is a convergence point. I was told this by someone who has been watching cosmic cartography for longer than most civilizations have existed. It produces extraordinary individuals at an improbable rate. Several entities with long views and significant resources are invested in controlling what those individuals become." Vegeta was very still. "The Saiyans," he said, "were removed from the board when they started producing people Frieza couldn't predict," Naruto said. "That's my working theory." He called it a threat assessment. It was a species that manufactures exactly the kind of individual he doesn't want loose in the universe. A long silence. The wind came over the peak from the east. It was cold up here. Neither of them was bothered by it. "The survivors Shinran mentioned," Vegeta said. "The yokai network has archives," Naruto said. "There is a woman in Kyoto who can access them. She believes she knows where to look." A woman in Kyoto. She is several things, Naruto said, not all of which translate cleanly into any single category. But she's reliable and she has more accurate cosmic cartography than anything I've encountered in this world. Vegeta looked at him. Something in his expression that was still being assembled. Why are you telling me this, he said. Because you came here looking for something real and you found it, Naruto said. The answer to the question is not no. That means somewhere in accessible space there are Saiyans who are alive. What you do with that is your business. But you deserve the information. Vegeta looked back at the horizon. And Frieza, he said, will be a problem, Naruto said. Yes. Eventually and significantly. But the timeline for that is not today. When it is today, Vegeta said slowly, I want to know. You will, Naruto said. They sat on the mountain for another hour. Below them the world went about its ordinary morning business, which was the same as it had always been except that it now contained several new variables and would not be the same again. Either of them spoke further. The silence was the kind that exists between two people who have said the necessary things and are now simply occupying the same space while the weight of them settles. Dinner at Chi-Chi's was the kind of event that expanded without being told to. It had begun as a meal for Gohan and Naruto and had acquired, by the time the evening arrived, Krillin and Bulma and Piccolo, who had not been invited and had come anyway because the coordinates Krillin had mentioned were on his way to somewhere else and also because he had decided he was going to be there. Nappa arrived at the door an hour before the meal because Bulma had mentioned the address while explaining local transportation to him, and he had appeared to file it without comment, and had then appeared at the door holding 2 containers of something that turned out to be a Saiyan grain product he had kept in his pod's emergency stores. He offered them to Chi-Chi with a formality that was slightly misaligned with the setting but was genuine. She took them. She looked at them. She asked 3 questions about preparation. He answered them. She made something with them that ended up as a side dish that everyone ate, and that Krillin described as terrifyingly good. Gohan sat beside Naruto at the table. He was quieter than the Gohan of 9 months ago, which was the Gohan of before all of this, the child version, the before Piccolo version. He was also clearly happier in a specific way, the way people are happy when they have found their footing in a situation they were afraid would overwhelm them. You fought them, Gohan said. I talked to one and fought the other, Naruto said. And now they're here. One of them is here. The other is on a mountain thinking. Gohan considered this. Piccolo said the best outcomes are the ones you can't predict from the starting position, he said. Piccolo said that? He said it obliquely. I translated. Naruto looked at Piccolo, who was at the far end of the table eating with the focused attention he brought to everything and pretending not to have heard. He's right, Naruto said. Dad is going to come back, Gohan said. It was not a question, and it was not quite a statement. It was a thing he was holding carefully, the way people hold things they have decided to believe in because they have examined the alternative and found it unlivable. He's going to come back, Naruto said. And he's going to come back to a world that's further along than he left it. Which is going to be interesting. Good interesting or complicated interesting? Yes, Naruto said. Gohan almost laughed. It was a real laugh, full and sudden and young, and the table caught the sound of it, and the room was better for it. Chi-Chi, from the kitchen doorway, heard it. She did not say anything. She went back to the stove and did not say anything, but there was a quality to the set of her shoulders that was different from an hour ago, something loosened, something that had been held under pressure for months and was now, very quietly, beginning to release. The last letter from Yasaka arrived 3 days after the dinner. It gave a date. It gave a place. It was in Kyoto, at a specific address in the old quarter that she described with the specificity of someone who assumed he would know how to find it. He would not have recognized the address from a map, but he would be able to find it the way he always found things, by following the energy of what he was looking for until the address became irrelevant. She wrote, at the end, "Bring no weapons you don't need. The network I represent has a sensitivity to armed approaches that I would prefer to manage carefully. Also, the tea here is very good and I would not want you to miss it because you set off the outer perimeter wards." He read this several times. He wrote back, "I will be there. I don't carry weapons in the ordinary sense. And I have been told my tea is acceptable by a party whose standards are difficult to meet, so I look forward to testing them elsewhere." He sent the scroll. He looked at the window for a while. The world outside was doing what it did, ordinary and specific and full of things that were not ordinary if you looked at them directly. The evening light was the same light it was every evening, and also, the way all evenings are, entirely itself, unrepeatable and going. He was going to Kyoto. He was going to Kyoto because a yokai leader who had been writing to him with the precision of a tactician and the candor of someone who had stopped performing indifference wanted to see if the person matched the correspondence. He was going because there were pieces of the larger picture that she held and he did not, and the picture needed to be complete. He was going because the network she commanded was the early warning system this world needed for what was coming after the seance. For the thing in the darkness behind Frisia that moved when the dragon's summoning moved and had not yet shown its face. These were the reasons. He was also going, he acknowledged to himself with the honesty he tried to maintain in private, because there was a specific quality to her letters that he had not encountered often, the quality of a mind that matched his own pace without straining, that went directly to the accurate thing and then went one step further to the honest thing, and he was curious about the person that quality belonged to. This was not a small thing. He had been careful, for a very long time, about things that were not small. He went back to work. Chapter 16, Kyoto. He arrived in Kyoto on a Thursday morning. The city was the kind of place that had been beautiful for so long that beauty had become part of its structural integrity, woven into the angles of the old quarter streets, and the specific shade of green on the older temple roofs. It was autumn in Kyoto, which meant the maples were doing what they did, turning the air between buildings the color of conversations that mattered. He found the address not by street number but by the energy signature, which was dense and layered in the specific manner of a place that has been lived in by something very old and very present. The building was at the end of a narrow street in the old quarter, behind a gate that was wooden and modest in a way that said nothing about what it was in front of. He stood at the gate. The ward on it recognized him before he knocked, which he had expected from her description. It read his chakra signature the way an old friend reads a voice, immediate and specific. The gate opened. The garden beyond was designed in the manner of something that had been allowing itself to grow naturally within a very precise structure for several hundred years. The stone path was clean. The water was moving. The air smelled of cedar, and the specific quality that old places have when they have been well tended. She was at the end of the path. She was taller than the formal portrait in the yokai archives, which was the only visual reference he had. She wore simple clothing in a style that was deliberately contemporary, as if she had decided the old quarter would carry enough history on its own without her adding to it. Her hair was a specific shade of amber brown that managed to look like autumn light, and also like something that had decided to look that way. Her ears were barely visible through her hair but were present, slightly pointed, which was the only thing that placed her outside the human range at a glance. Her eyes were amber. They were looking at him the way she wrote, directly and without preamble. "You found it without the address," she said. "In Japanese?" She had written to him in Japanese and he had answered in kind, and now they were speaking it, and it suited the city. "You knew I would," he said. "I suspected." A pause that was assessing and not uncomfortable. "You match." "I'm told that's good." "It depends on what you match," she said. "Come inside." The interior of the building was older than its exterior suggested, the way certain things are older on the inside. The space was high-ceilinged and warm with the specific warmth of somewhere that has had fires in it for centuries and has absorbed the heat into its bones. There were bookshelves that contained texts she was not going to explain to him today but which he could feel at a distance the way he could feel old jutsu seals, the pressure of accumulated intent. She had tea ready. She poured it without asking his preference, which meant she already knew it, which meant she had either researched him or could read it from his energy. He suspected both. He sat across from her. "The network," he said. "In a moment," she said. "I want to look at you first." He allowed it. He sat with the same stillness he had offered Amaterasu, the stillness of someone who had nothing to defend and did not perform openness but simply was it. She looked at him for a considerable time. Not with the clinical attention of assessment, though that was present. With the specific attention of someone who has been corresponding with an unknown quantity, and is now matching the quantity to its container. "The fox in you," she said, "is not aggressive. It's not the nine tails energy. I wrote that before, but I want to confirm it in person. A pause. It's more like a question than a force. That's the most accurate description of it I've ever received, he said. What is the question? He was quiet for a moment. Whether the world I'm protecting is the world or my idea of the world, he said. Whether I protect people because they need protecting or because I need to protect them. Whether those things are different. He looked at her. I've been asking it for a long time. I don't have a final answer. She was still. Her amber eyes were warm and specific. That is, she said, a very good question to still be asking. So I've been told. By whom? People I trusted. They were right. She poured more tea and began telling him about the network. She told him about the 3 nodes she had mapped, and the 4th she suspected. She told him about the broker entity, and the specific trail it had left after the dragon's summoning, and where that trail had led. She told him what the yokai archives held regarding the outer cosmic cartography, and the significance of Earth as a convergence point, and the entities with long views who had been circling it for longer than the Dragon Balls had existed. He listened. He asked questions that were specific and she answered them with the same precision she used in her letters, and he understood why the letters had felt the way they felt. She was not performing intelligence when she wrote. She was simply herself, and herself was this, layered and accurate, and several steps ahead of most available conclusions. They worked for 3 hours. At the end of it she sat back and looked at him again. You are going to be very difficult to predict, she said. For the entities that have an interest in this planet. That's the plan. It is not a plan most individuals of your power level would arrive at. Most of them prefer the approach that announces itself. Announcing yourself is for people who want to be known, he said. I want to be effective. She tilted her head slightly. Those things are usually the same thing for warriors. I'm not just a warrior. No, she agreed. You are not. A silence. Not empty. The kind that has content of its own. I will come to the East Continent, she said. Not immediately. But soon. There are things I need to see in person and conversations I need to have with the people you are working with. She looked at her tea. I have been managing this situation from a distance for a long time. The dragon summoning changed the shape of things. Distances I was comfortable with are no longer correct. You're welcome when you come, he said. That is generous considering you are not the one who owns the buildings. They'll accept my word on it. She looked at him. Something in her expression that was not quite a smile, but was related to one. Yes. I imagine they will. He stayed until the afternoon. They moved from the formal working conversation to something less structured, not because either of them decided to, but because it happened the way things happen when 2 people with similar rhythms find themselves in the same space long enough. She showed him the archives that were relevant. He described the approach at the basin, and she asked questions that went to the parts he had not included in the main account, the things under the stated events. He answered them. He went back to the eastern continent in the late afternoon, moving through the air above a world that was still finding its new shape, and behind him the city of Kyoto lay in its autumn colors like a careful answer to a question the landscape had been asking for centuries. He was thinking about amber eyes and the specific quality of a silence that has content of its own. He was also thinking about broker entities and cosmic cartography, and the thing behind Frisia that had moved when the dragon's summoning moved. He recognized, doing both at once. This was fine. He had a high tolerance for holding things simultaneously. Chapter 17, The Board Resets. Graphia arrived for her monthly visit to find the situation comprehensively altered. She stepped through her gate into the field she had been using for the past several months and found Naruto there as usual, but also found, occupying a rock 20 meters away, a Saiyan prince who looked at her with the expression of a man who had decided to evaluate everything at once and was currently evaluating her. She evaluated him back. Graphia Lucifuge, Naruto said. Vegeta. He already knows who you are. He does his research. As do I, Graphia said, which was true. She had prepared a comprehensive file on both incoming Scions weeks before their arrival. What she had not prepared for was finding one of them sitting in the field at a month's end looking like he had decided this was his field now. He's been here 2 weeks, Naruto said. He's integrating. Into what, precisely? Into the situation. Naruto paused. He has information about Frisia's operation that is relevant to several things we've been discussing. And he has an interest in what comes after. Vegeta, who had been listening without pretending not to, said, "The devil woman wants to know if I'm a threat." "I want to know if you're a variable," Graphia said precisely. "What's the difference? A threat I would need to report to the great Satans. A variable I can manage myself." Something in Vegeta's expression shifted towards something that was, and probably, fractionally amused. "Efficient. It's a useful quality," she said. She turned to Naruto. The underworld observed the dragon summoning. The faction that wanted the Scions to succeed is now in damage control mode. Surzex is managing it directly, which is a positive indicator, but there may be external pressure, meaning they'll look for another angle. "Meaning they will look for another angle," she confirmed. "The broker entity you identified to me last month is connected to that faction. I've been tracing the connection since the summoning. Yasaka tracked it to 4 nodes. Graphia paused. "You've been working with the yokai leader. She has better cosmic cartography than anyone else in accessible range," Naruto said. "And a reliable network." A pause that contained several things. "You are building an infrastructure," she said. "I'm addressing the problem at the correct scale," he said. "Those are the same thing." "Yes." She looked at him with the expression she had developed over the months of their acquaintance, the one that meant she was finding him precisely as complex as expected, and no simpler. "I will need to tell Surzex something," she said. "Tell him the situation here is stable and the variables are aligned in a direction that is not contrary to the underworld's interests. And if he asks for specifics, tell him to visit," Naruto said. "I don't mind explaining it directly." Graphia blinked. "Once. Which was a significant event by her standards. You would invite the great Satan Lucifer to this field. To a proper meeting, yes. If he wants the full picture, he can come and get it. I'm not going to send summaries through channels when the situation is complex enough to require context." She was very quiet for a moment. "I will convey the invitation," she said. "Good." She turned back to the field and produced from somewhere in her uniform a set of papers that turned out to be her most recent intelligence compilation, formatted with the precise organization that was her signature. She handed them to him. "The 4th node of the broker network," she said. "I found it this week. The location is in the last section." He opened to the last section. "Read it." "That's unexpected," he said. "Yes. And you're certain?" "I don't include things I'm not certain of." He read it again. The 4th node was not where any of their models had predicted. It was not in any category of location they had been searching. It was a type of entity rather than a place, which changed the whole framework of the search and required the picture to be rebuilt from a different angle. "This is going to require a conversation with Amaterasu," he said. "I assumed. And with Yasaka. Also assumed. And possibly with Vegeta, depending on whether the entity's history intersects with what he knows." "Vegeta, from his rock, it does." Both of them looked at him. "I recognize the description," he said. "Tell me what you know and I'll tell you what I know. We'll see what's in the overlap." Graphia looked at Naruto. He looked at her. "Get comfortable," he said to both of them. "This is going to be a long afternoon." The long afternoon produced a map. Not a literal one, though Bulma would produce a literal version later when she arrived with her tablet and her coffee and her complete inability to be in the same building as an analytical problem without attacking it directly. The map was a structural one, a picture of what was actually happening behind the stated events, built from the convergence of 3 different intelligence streams that had been approaching the same shape from different angles. What the map showed was this. The entity behind the broker network was not a person. It was a faction, old enough to predate the current supernatural governance structure by several centuries, organized around a specific interest in Earth that went beyond resources or territory. The interest was in the Dragon Balls, specifically in the question of what happened to a world when wishes had been granted multiple times at the planetary scale. The faction's theory, so far as Vegeta could reconstruct it from what the Scion archives had contained before Vegetasiai's destruction, was that repeated large-scale wish-granting created a kind of cosmic resonance in a planet's structure. A precedent. A weakness or a window, depending on your perspective. The faction wanted access to that resonance, not to the Dragon Balls themselves. To what the Dragon Balls left behind. "They have been arranging conflicts on this planet for decades," Graphia said, reading from her notes. Not causing them. Arranging them. Conflicts that would end in Dragon Ball use. Each use leaves a trace that the faction collects. Collecting toward what? Bulma said from the doorway. She had arrived 30 minutes into the conversation and had installed herself at the edge of it with the quiet efficiency of someone who has decided the conversation needs her, and has taken steps accordingly. A threshold, Naruto said. I think. It's not a resource collection. It's a cumulative effect they're building toward. Like a charge, Bulma said. Building up a charge. That analogy works. What happens when the charge is complete? Nobody answered immediately. That's what we need to find out, Naruto said. Before it happens, how many uses are they short of the threshold? Krillin said. He had come in behind Bulma and had been listening from the wall with the specific quiet of someone absorbing information seriously. Unknown, Graphia said. The archive data Vegeta has access to covers only the period when the Saiyan intelligence network was operational. There may have been uses before that period that we have no record of. Amaterasu might, Naruto said. She's been watching this planet's spiritual signature for longer than any extant intelligence operation. Then we need to talk to Amaterasu, Bulma said, opening her tablet. How do we reach her? She reaches us, Naruto said. But she's been monitoring. She'll come when the picture is clear enough to require her. That's not a very practical scheduling system, Bulma said. No, he agreed. Fine. She started building the structural model on her tablet. Someone narrate from the beginning. Slowly. I need the full picture. Amaterasu arrived before nightfall. She came through the door again, which was the same way she had arrived the first time, and Rashi, who was the only one in the main room when she appeared, managed the occasion with considerably more composure than his usual standard, which Naruto thought was worth noting. She had heard enough. The faction is called the Remnant, she said, when the group had assembled and she had been given tea and had sat at the table with the unhurried manner of someone who moves at her own pace regardless of how much is happening. They predate the current Dragon Ball system. They were present before Kami installed the first set on Earth. In fact, they were present before the planet had its current spiritual structure. How is that possible? Piccolo said. He had appeared at some point in the afternoon in the manner he usually appeared, without announcement or explanation. They are not native to this world. They have been here long enough to be woven into its history, but they are not of it. She held her tea. They are old in a way that makes the Devil Peerage's history look recent. They have been patient in the way that something very old and very interested is patient, waiting for the correct moment across decades and centuries. And the threshold they're building toward, Naruto said, is closer than any model based on recorded Dragon Ball uses would suggest, Amaterasu said. Because there have been uses that were not recorded in any system any of you have access to. She looked at him directly. I have been counting. For a very long time. The room was very still. How close? Bulma said. The next full summoning would bring them to the threshold. Silence. Then we don't summon, Krillin said. Someone will, Vegeta said. He was leaning against the far wall with his arms crossed. The Dragon Balls don't stay hidden. And the kind of power that attracts enemies also attracts people who want to use them for genuine reasons. You cannot simply decide the Dragon Balls don't get used. The universe doesn't cooperate with decisions like that. He's right, Naruto said. So what do we do? Chi-Chi said. She had been sitting at the table since the afternoon, listening with the focused attention she brought to things that concerned her world, and now she said the only question that actually mattered with the directness that was her best quality. Naruto looked at Amaterasu. She looked at him. We change what the threshold opens, he said slowly. Not prevent the summoning. Change what happens when the charge is complete. Make it do something other than what the remnant is waiting for. Is that possible? Bulma said. Amaterasu set down her tea. It is, she said. With the correct understanding of the existing structure, and the correct application of power at the correct moment. She looked at Naruto. Was someone at the center of it who can hold a level of energy that would exceed anything this planet has been asked to contain? Everyone looked at him. He did not look away from her. Walk me through the structure, he said. Chapter 18, the night before. The conversation went until midnight. Then past midnight. into the particular hours that have no official name, the hours that belong to the people who have no choice about being awake in them. Amaterasu laid out the structure of the Dragon Ball resonance system with the patience of someone who had been carrying the complete picture alone for a very long time and was now in the presence of people who could both understand it and do something with it. She was not a patient person by nature, he suspected. She had become one out of necessity, the way certain things become what they need to be over long enough periods. But explaining to people who could actually respond was different from explaining to historical figures who could only record. Bulma built the model in real time. When she needed to stop Amaterasu to clarify a mechanism, she did it without apology, and Amaterasu answered without condescension, which was a combination that produced work at a genuinely impressive rate. Vegeta contributed 3 times. Each contribution was specific and structural, and went directly to the part of the model that needed it. He had information about the remnant that came from Saiyan archives predating Frieza's purge, information nobody else in the room had access to, and he shared it with the straightforward manner of someone who had decided that this table was where the useful work was happening and had therefore placed his information on it. Graphia contributed the Underworld's files on the remnant factions known associated entities, which were extensive, and which she had been carrying in that uniform's somehow capacious pockets, organized and ready. Piccolo said 4 things, all of them questions, all of them the questions that nobody else had thought to ask, which made them the most important 4 contributions in the room. Chi-Chi made coffee at 2 in the morning without being asked and set it on the table and did not speak, which was its own kind of contribution, the kind that keeps everything else running. By 3 in the morning they had a framework. Not a plan. A framework. The plan would need more time and more information and the specific kind of testing that you could only do by working through the details. But the framework was enough. It said this is possible. It said here is the shape of how. It said the pieces exist. People began to drift towards sleep in whatever configurations the house allowed. Naruto stayed at the table. Amaterasu stayed. You understand what the center position requires, she said. Yes. It requires someone who can hold the full force of the threshold transition. The remnant will not be passive when we move. They will resist. The resistance will be expressed as force, directed at the focal point. I know. You will need to be capable of absorbing or redirecting that force while simultaneously holding the counter-resonance pattern. I know. She looked at him. Are you afraid? He considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I'm aware, he said. Which is different. How is it different? Fear anticipates the thing and works against you. Awareness works with the information. They feel similar from the outside, but they produce different results. He looked at the map Bulma had left on the table, full of nodes and connections and arrows that weren't finished yet. I've been afraid before. I know what it feels like. This isn't it. She was quiet. What is it? She said. He thought about it. Ready, he said. It's what ready feels like. Which I didn't used to know because I used to confuse being prepared with being unafraid. A pause. I'm not unafraid. I'm ready. The distinction took a long time to learn. Amaterasu looked at him for a very long time. 11,000 years, she said quietly. Since the last individual who carried what you carry, you mentioned. He was not ready, she said. He was very powerful and very brave, and he was not ready. And the difference mattered. She looked at the table. I watched him. I could not intervene. That was the hardest thing I have done in a very long existence. He understood what she was saying beneath what she was saying. I'm not him, he said. No, she agreed. You are not. She rose. She went to the door. At the threshold she paused with the quality of someone who is about to say something that is more personal than their station usually permits. For what it's worth, she said, I am not watching from a distance this time. The moment you need the divine network, it will be there. I know, he said. Thank you. She left. He sat alone in the kitchen at 3 in the morning with cold coffee and a map that wasn't finished, and the particular quality of silence that exists when everyone who needed to say something has said it, and what remains is the work. He picked up the coffee. It was cold. He drank it anyway. Outside, the night was doing what it does, moving toward its own end, and the stars were the same stars they had been all his life and were not the same at all, and the world below them was something he had come to unexpectedly and had found, unexpectedly, worth everything. He thought about Yasaka's amber eyes and the specific quality of a room where two people have found the same rhythm without arranging it. He thought about Chi-Chi's voice when she said her son's name. He thought about Bulma's focused face in the small hours over a model that needed to be right. He thought about Graphia's precise handwriting and the way she had said, without pretense, that the people in this house would miss him. He thought about the world outside the window. The specific, unrepeatable, improbable world that manufactured miracles and kept doing it, stubbornly and without asking for recognition. He thought, yes. He thought, this is what it's for. He went to work. The night moved around him, patient and very dark, carrying its stars. In the morning there would be more to do and more after that, and the thing in the distance was large and had been patient for a very long time, and would not be simple. None of it was simple. That was, he had come to understand, not the problem with it. That was the point.